I never expected to find the letter that would unravel my entire marriage while cleaning out my mother's old cedar chest. The musty smell of aged wood and mothballs filled my nose as I lifted the worn envelope. My mother's elegant handwriting still crisp after all these years. My name is Lila, and after 32 years of marriage, I thought I knew everything about my husband, Graham. I was wrong. Are you still messing with that old junk? Graham's voice carried from downstairs, tinged with that familiar note of impatience he developed over the years. The realtor will be here in an hour. Just finishing up, I called back, my fingers trembling as I opened the envelope. The paper was thin, delicate, dated just weeks before my wedding. My parents had always been polite to Graham, but something in their eyes never quite matched their smiles. Now I knew why. Dearest Lila, the letter began. There are things about Graham that worry your father and me. Things we've discovered that you need to know. Mom, my son Caleb's voice startled me. He stood in the doorway, looking so much like his father did at that age it almost hurt. You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. I quickly folded the letter and slipped it into my pocket. Just found some old memories, honey. Dad's getting antsy about the realtor. Caleb's eyes narrowed slightly. You know, we don't have to sell the farm. I could help you keep it running. Before I could respond, Graham's footsteps thundered up the stairs. There you both are. The realtor just called. She's running early. His smile was bright, practiced. The same smile he'd used to convince me to leave the farm 30 years ago, only to return now to sell it after my parents' passing. Lila, darling, you really should change into something more presentable. I looked down at my worn jeans and flannel shirt, then back at him in his pressed khakis and designer polo. The distance between us had never felt greater. I'll dress how I please on my family's farm, I said quietly, surprising myself with the steel in my voice. Graham's smile flickered for just a moment. Of course, dear. Whatever you think is best. But his eyes had that cold gleam I'd been seeing more often lately. Caleb cleared his throat. I'll head down and make some coffee for everyone. As his footsteps faded, Graham stepped closer, lowering his voice. We need this sale, Lila. You know that. His hand brushed my arm, but it felt more like a warning than affection. I touched the letter in my pocket, thinking of my parents' concerns buried in those pages. I asked. Do I really know anything anymore, Graham? His face hardened for a split second before smoothing back into that perfect mask. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. But standing there, watching my husband's carefully controlled expression, I knew things would never be the same. My parents had tried to warn me all those years ago. Now it was time to find out exactly what they knew. The realtor's visit went exactly as Graham wanted, quick, efficient, and ending with a promise to list the farm well above market value. I couldn't focus on any of it, though. My mother's letter burned in my pocket like a hot coal, and Graham's practiced charm felt more suffocating than ever. After the realtor left, I needed air. The old maple tree behind the barn had always been my thinking spot, but Graham's voice followed me even there. We should be celebrating, he called out, crossing the yard with 2 glasses of wine. This sale could set us up for life, Lila. I watched him approach, noticing how his expensive shoes sank slightly into the soft earth. He'd never gotten used to farm life, always treating it like something beneath him. I was thinking about Caleb, I said. Graham's smile tightened. What about him? He offered to help keep the farm running. Absolutely not. Graham set the wine glasses down harder than necessary on the old picnic table. He has a career in tech. He doesn't need to throw that away playing farmer. Like I threw away my life playing farmer? The words slipped out before I could stop them. Graham's face did that thing where it completely smoothed over, like drawing curtains across a window. That's not what I meant, and you know it. I gave you a better life in the city. Gave me? I stood up straighter. I left everything I knew for you, Graham. My family, my home. And look how well that turned out. He gestured broadly at his designer clothes. We have a beautiful house, social connections, everything we could want. Everything you could want, I corrected quietly. Before he could respond, Caleb's voice carried across the yard. Mom? Dad? You might want to see this. We found Caleb in the barn, holding an old leather briefcase. My heart stopped. I recognized it as my father's. Found this tucked away in the hayloft, Caleb said, brushing off dust. Looks like Grandpa kept some interesting records. Graham stepped forward. That's private family business. My family's business, I interrupted, taking the briefcase from Caleb. And since we're selling the farm, I should probably know exactly what's in here. Graham's hand shot out, gripping my arm. Lila, there's no need to dig up ancient history. What's done is done. I looked down at his hand, then back up at his face. Something in my expression made him let go immediately. Dad, Caleb said, his voice carrying a warning note I'd never heard before. Maybe you should take a walk. Graham's mask slipped for just a second, showing something ugly underneath. Then he smiled, all charm again. Of course. You two enjoy your little treasure hunt. I need to make some calls anyway. As he walked away, Caleb turned to me. Mom, there's something else you should know. I've been doing some digging of my own, and Dad's been… Wait, I said, pulling out my mother's letter. First, I need you to read this. Then we'll open the briefcase together. Caleb took the letter, his expression growing darker as he read. When he finished, he looked up at me with my father's eyes. Mom, I think we need to stop the farm sale. Right now. Why? Because, he said grimly, I don't think Dad's planning to share the money with you at all. My hands trembled as I spread the contents of my father's briefcase across the kitchen table. Bank statements, old contracts, and a stack of letters painted a picture I wasn't ready to see. Caleb sat beside me, his laptop open, connecting decades-old paper trails to modern digital footprints. Look at this, he said, turning his screen toward me. Dad's been taking out loans against the farm for years. He forged your signature on at least 3 of them. The room spun slightly. That's impossible. I would have known. Would you? Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. He's always handled the finances. Said it was taking the burden off you, remember? A memory surfaced. Graham insisting I sign papers without reading them, always with that disarming smile. Just trust me, darling. Why stress yourself with these details? The kitchen door swung open, and Graham walked in, freezing when he saw the briefcase's contents spread across the table. For a split second, raw panic flashed across his face before his usual smooth mask slipped back into place. What's all this? He moved toward the table, but Caleb shifted subtly, blocking his path. Why don't you tell us about the loans, Dad? Caleb's voice carried an edge I'd never heard before. Or maybe about Uncle Eldon's offer? Graham's laugh sounded forced. What offer? I haven't spoken to Eldon in years. Really? I pulled out a letter dated just 2 weeks ago. Then why is he writing about your plans to take over his company? About how selling my family's farm would give you the capital you need. Lila, darling, you're misunderstanding. Don't. My voice shook, but not from fear. Don't you dare call me darling while you're standing there lying to my face. Graham's charm vanished like smoke.
Fine.
You want the truth? I'm suffocating here, playing happy family while watching opportunities slip away. Eldon's offering me everything I've worked for, and you're both trying to ruin it with your sentimental attachment to this worthless piece of land. Worthless. I stood up slowly. This farm put Caleb through college. It paid for your fancy cars and designer clothes. It's been in my family for 4 generations. And now it's going to set me free. His smile turned cruel. The papers are already signed, Lila. The sale goes through next week, and there's nothing you can do about it. Caleb stood up. Actually, there is. I've already contacted the bank about the fraudulent loans. And Uncle Eldon? He's very interested in hearing about your creative financing. Graham's face went white. You wouldn't dare. I'm your father. No. Caleb cut him off. You're the man who's been stealing from my mother for 30 years. Graham turned to me, desperation replacing his usual confidence. Lila, please. We can work this out. Everything I did was for us. Get out. The words came easily, decades of suppressed anger finally breaking free. Get out of my house, Graham. My lawyer will contact you tomorrow. He opened his mouth to argue, but something in my expression stopped him. Without another word, he turned and walked out, leaving behind the echoing sound of his expensive shoes on my farmhouse floor. Caleb touched my shoulder. "Mom, are you okay?" I looked at my son, seeing my father's strength in his eyes. "No," I said honestly, "but I will be." The morning after I kicked Graham out, I found myself staring at my reflection in the farmhouse bathroom mirror, barely recognizing the woman looking back. My phone buzzed for the 10th time, another message from Graham's lawyer. I ignored it. Downstairs, Caleb was already at the kitchen table, surrounded by papers and his laptop. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he hadn't slept much either. "You need to see this," he said without looking up. "I found something in Dad's email records." "Should I even ask how you got those?" A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "Probably not." I sat down beside him, and he turned the screen toward me. The email chain showed correspondence between Graham and someone named Sky. Recent emails. Intimate emails. "There's more," Caleb said quietly. "She's 26. Works at Uncle Eldon's company. They've been seeing each other for months." The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too warm. I got up and walked to the window, watching the morning fog roll across the fields my grandfather had planted decades ago. "Mom," Caleb's voice was gentle. "There's something else. About the farm sale." The back door creaked open, cutting him off. Graham stood there, looking unusually disheveled in yesterday's clothes. "You shouldn't be here," I said, but he held up his hands in surrender. "Please, just listen. I can explain everything." "Explain what?" Caleb stood up. "The affair? The forged loans? Or maybe how you planned to transfer the farm sale money to an offshore account?" Graham's face went slack with shock. "How did you? I'm in tech, remember? The career you were so proud of me pursuing." Caleb's laugh was bitter. "Turns out those skills are pretty useful for exposing fraud." "It's not fraud," Graham snapped. "Everything I did was for this family." "Stop." My voice was quiet but firm. "Just stop lying, Graham. For once in your life, tell the truth." He looked between us, then something seemed to break. His shoulders sagged. "Fine. You want the truth? I'm broke. The debts, the gambling, it all caught up. Eldon offered me a way out, but I needed capital. The farm was my only option." "Our farm," I corrected. "My family's legacy." "A legacy of what?" "Dirt and hard work." His mask slipped completely, showing the contempt beneath. "I gave you civilization, culture. I made you somebody." "No," I said, moving to stand beside Caleb. "You made me smaller. Every year, every lie, every time you made me doubt myself, you were making me smaller to make yourself feel bigger." Graham's face hardened. "Well, it doesn't matter now. The sale contract is binding. In a week, this will all be over." Caleb smiled, and for the first time, I saw something of Graham in him, but sharper, more focused. "Actually, I already spoke to Uncle Eldon this morning. Interesting man. Very interested in hearing about your creative accounting at his company." The color drained from Graham's face. "You're bluffing." "Want to bet on that?" Caleb asked. "Seems risky, given your track record with gambling." Graham turned to me, desperate now. "Lila, please. We can work this out. Think about our life together." "I am," I said. "And I'm thinking about the life I want now, without you in it." He stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out, leaving the door open behind him. The morning fog rolled in, carrying the scent of damp earth and new possibilities. "Mom," Caleb touched my arm. "Are you ready to hear the rest about the farm?" I nodded, feeling stronger than I had in years. "Yes." No more secrets. Eldon Whitaker's office felt like stepping into another century, all dark wood and leather, with a view of the city that made everything below look like toys. The old man himself sat behind an enormous desk, studying me with eyes that reminded me painfully of Graham's. "So," he said, "you're the farm girl who's been causing all this trouble." "I prefer rightful property owner," I replied, keeping my voice steady. Though I suspect you already knew that when you made your deal with Graham. Eldon's laugh was surprisingly warm.
Direct.
I like that. He pulled out a folder and slid it across the desk. Take a look. Inside were photos, Graham with Sky at expensive restaurants, on vacations, shopping for rings. The dates on them went back almost 2 years. Why are you showing me these? My fingers crumpled the edge of one photo. Because Graham's been playing us both. Eldon leaned forward. He promised Sky marriage, told her he was divorcing his cold, controlling wife. Used her position here to access sensitive information. Meanwhile, he told me he needed the farm money to expand the business, promised me loyalty if I helped him secure it. I thought of Graham's desperate face yesterday morning. But you never intended to give him the company, did you? Give my life's work to a man who betrays everyone who trusts him? Eldon scoffed. I needed proof of his true nature. Thanks to you and your son, I got it. My phone buzzed, another message from Graham. I ignored it. There's more, Eldon continued. Graham's gambling debts? They're to some very dangerous people. He's not just trying to steal your farm. He's running scared. A knock at the door interrupted us. A young woman entered, beautiful, nervous, and instantly recognizable from the photos. Uncle Eldon, Sky stopped short when she saw me. I'm sorry, I didn't. It's all right, I said, standing. I think we should talk. The next hour was brutal. Sky's story poured out. Graham's promises, the manipulation, the lies. She showed me texts where he claimed I was abusive, that I'd trapped him in a loveless marriage. I'm so sorry, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. I never knew. He seemed so sincere. He always does, I said softly.
My phone buzzed again.
This time, I looked. Graham. Meeting at the farm. 3 p.m. Last chance to fix this peacefully. Eldon watched me read it. You know it's a trap, right? He's desperate now. Dangerous. Good. I stood up, suddenly clear about what needed to happen. Because I'm done being afraid of Graham's games. Mrs. Whitaker, Sky said, what are you going to do? I looked between them. The Uncle Graham tried to deceive, the young woman he'd manipulated, and thought about my son at home, working to protect our legacy. I'm going to do what I should have done 30 years ago, I said. I'm going to show Graham exactly who he married. As I left Eldon's office, my phone buzzed one final time. Caleb. Mom, don't go to the farm alone. Graham's withdrawn everything from our accounts. All of it. I smiled grimly as I stepped into the elevator. Graham wanted to play his final hand?
Fine.
But this time I was holding all the cards. The farm looked different at sunset. Shadows stretched across the fields like reaching fingers as I pulled up to find Graham's expensive car already parked in front of the barn. Caleb's warning text flashed through my mind, but I pushed it aside. This needed to end. I found Graham in my father's old office, rifling through the desk drawers. Looking for something? My voice made him jump. Lila. He straightened, trying to summon his usual charm. I was hoping we could talk privately. About what? The money you stole? Your girlfriend? Or maybe the gambling debts? His smile faltered. I see Eldon's been talking. You can't trust him, Lila. He's trying to turn you against me. Like you tried to turn Sky against me? I pulled out my phone, showing him the photos. 30 years, Graham. 30 years of lies. Everything I did was for us. Stop. My voice cracked like a whip. No more lies. Where's the money? Something dark crossed his face. Safe. And it'll stay that way unless you sign these. He pulled out a stack of papers. Full ownership of the farm. Transferred to me. Sign, and I'll make sure you're taken care of. Like you took care of me all these years? I laughed, but it sounded hollow. I trusted you with everything, my home, my family's legacy, my life. And you never loved any of it, did you? I loved the potential. He stepped closer. This farm, your family name, they were stepping stones. We could have been so much more if you hadn't been so provincial. The word hit like a slap. All those years of him subtly mocking my background, making me feel small, rushed back. Sign the papers, Lila.
His voice softened.
Don't force me to do this the hard way. What's the hard way, Dad? We both turned to find Caleb in the doorway, holding a laptop. This isn't your concern, son, Graham said. Actually, it is. Caleb opened the laptop. See, while you were busy emptying accounts and meeting with Sky, I was following the money. Every transfer, every hidden account, every contact with your gambling friends. One click, and it all goes to the FBI. Graham's mask cracked completely. You're bluffing. Try me. Caleb's voice was steel. I'm my mother's son. We protect what's ours. Graham moved so fast I barely saw it. Suddenly he had my arm, twisting it behind my back. New deal, he snarled. Delete everything or... The sound of a shotgun cocking froze us all. Or what? Eldon stood in the other doorway, my father's old shotgun in his hands. Let her go, Graham. It's over. Uncle Eldon, please. Graham's voice turned desperate. We can work something out. Like you work things out with my company's accounts? Eldon's aim didn't waver. The police are already on their way. Your choice how they find you. Graham's grip tightened painfully. I could feel him trembling, cornered, and dangerous. In that moment, I saw him clearly for the first time. Not the charming man I married, but a coward who'd spent his life running from consequences. Graham, I said quietly, let go. Please don't make this worse. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Graham shoved me away, hard. I hit the desk as he bolted past Eldon, out into the gathering darkness. Caleb rushed to help me up. Mom, are you okay? I looked at my son, then at Eldon, still holding my father's shotgun. Outside, police sirens wailed in the distance. No, I said honestly, but I will be. 3 days after Graham ran, I found him waiting on my parents' graves. The morning fog hadn't lifted yet, making him look like a ghost among the headstones. Maybe that's all he'd ever been, a phantom of the man I thought I'd married. They were right about me, he said without turning around. Your parents. They saw through me from the start. Why are you here, Graham? He looked terrible unshaven, wearing wrinkled clothes that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. They found the offshore accounts. Frozen everything. Even Sky's gone. He laughed bitterly. Turns out she didn't want a penniless older man after all. Karma's funny that way. I need your help, Lila. He finally turned to face me. One last time. Sign over the farm, and I'll disappear forever. Clean slate for both of us. You really don't get it, do you? I stepped closer to my parents' graves, touching my mother's headstone. This was never about money. Then what? His voice cracked. What did you want from me? The truth. Just once. Something shifted in his eyes. That familiar calculation I'd missed for so many years. The truth is, I loved you. In my way. Your way being lies, manipulation, and theft. I gave you a better life. He stepped toward me, desperate now. You were nothing but a farm girl when I found you. I made you sophisticated, gave you culture. You made me ashamed. The words came out quiet but sharp. Of my family, my background, myself. Every compliment was really a criticism. Every gift came with strings. Lila, please. I already signed the papers, Graham. He froze. What papers? The ones transferring ownership of the farm. I smiled slightly. To Caleb. His face contorted. You can't. Already done. This morning. Along with evidence of your fraud sent to the FBI. He lunged forward, grabbing my arm. You stupid. The click of a safety being released stopped him cold. Let go of my mother. Caleb's voice carried across the cemetery. He stood with Eldon and 2 police officers, all watching Graham carefully. Graham's grip loosened. Son, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. Caleb moved closer, his aim steady. Mom taught me about legacy, about honor. You taught me what kind of man not to be. Graham looked between us, his mask crumbling completely. For the first time, I saw him clearly, small, desperate, empty. Officers, Eldon called out. This is the man I spoke to you about. As they approached, Graham turned to me one last time. I could have made you extraordinary. No, I said softly. I already was. You just couldn't see it. I watched them lead him away, his expensive shoes stumbling on the damp grass. Caleb lowered the gun and wrapped an arm around my shoulders. You okay? I looked at my parents' graves, thinking of their letter, their warnings, their love. You know what? I really am. The morning fog began to lift, revealing the farm spread out below us, strong, enduring, free, just like me. Let's go home, I said to my son. We have work to do. 1 year later, I stood in the newly renovated barn, watching Caleb explain our hydroponic farming system to a group of agricultural students. The old place had transformed, solar panels on the roof, computer stations next to traditional farming tools, and rows of indoor crops growing alongside our traditional fields. Mom, Caleb caught my eye from across the room. Want to tell them about the Heritage Wheat Project? I smiled, remembering my father's passion for sustainable farming. Actually, I think Eldon should handle that part. Eldon stepped forward from where he'd been quietly observing. The past year had changed him too. Working with us had given him something Graham never could: genuine family connection. The Heritage Wheat Program, he began, was Lila's idea, combining traditional farming knowledge with modern technology, just like this partnership. After the students left, Caleb found me in the office, my father's old office, now modernized but still holding his worn leather chair. Got something to show you, he said, setting his laptop down. Remember that tech startup I've been working with? Look who just invested. The screen showed a familiar name, Sky Martinez, now running her own investment firm. She wanted to make things right, Caleb explained. Said she learned about integrity the hard way. Haven't we all? I touched my mother's letter, now framed on the wall alongside our new business licenses. Heard from the prison today, Caleb said quietly. Dad's requesting visitation again. I looked out the window at our thriving fields. What did you tell them? Same as always, balls in your court, Mom. I thought about Graham, about revenge and justice and healing. Maybe someday, I said. But not today. We have more important things to focus on. Eldon knocked on the door frame. Speaking of focus, the Organic Certification Board is here, ready to show them what a modern family farm looks like. Family farm. The words meant something different now. Not just blood and history, but choice and growth. The legacy my parents wanted to protect had evolved into something they never could have imagined, but would have loved. Before we go, Caleb said, there's one more thing. He pulled out an envelope, not unlike the one that started all this. The bank approved our loan to buy the Peterson place next door. We can expand the sustainable farming program. I took the envelope, feeling its weight. Not just paper, but possibility. Your grandfather always said that land was meant to grow more than just crops. He was right, Caleb smiled. It grows strength too. As we walked out to meet the certification board, I caught my reflection in a window. I saw what Graham never could, not just a farm girl or a sophisticated city wife, but a woman who'd finally grown into herself, roots and all. You know, Eldon said as we crossed the yard, Graham once told me you'd never understand real business. I laughed, watching our employees, young farmers and tech experts working side by side, tend to both ancient soil and modern innovation. Graham never understood that the best business isn't about taking, I said. It's about growing something larger than yourself. The afternoon sun caught the solar panels, making them shine like beacons. Below them, my family's wheat swayed in the breeze, strong and free, just like me.
The sound of Erin Johnson's fingertips accurately tapping the calculator keys echoed in her small home office. As a single mother, she glanced at the clock while making final adjustments to a client's year-end financial statement. She had to pick up her son Noah from school in 30 minutes. Mom, aren't you done yet? 10-year-old Noah peeked into the room. His bright brown hair and big blue eyes resembled his father's. Erin smiled and picked up her coffee mug. I'll be done soon. Did you finish your homework? Noah nodded and showed her the paper in his hand. I solved all the math problems. But I have a question about history. Erin always took pride in her son's school performance. She herself had supported their household and raised her son alone while working as an excellent accountant at a small local company. Since her father passed away from a heart attack 5 years ago, her responsibilities had increased, but she never complained. Can you wait just 10 more minutes? I'll help you with history when I'm finished. The phone rang, and Erin sighed. It was from her mother, Vivian. Listen, Erin. We need to talk about tomorrow's dinner party. Vivian's voice always had a demanding tone. Amanda is bringing her fiancé. You'll be coming, won't you? Erin frowned. Her sister Amanda had always been the favored child in the family. Beautiful and sociable, she was Vivian's favorite daughter. In comparison, Erin was always told she was too practical and boring. Of course I'll come, Mom. I'll bring Noah too. On the other end of the line, she heard her mother sigh. Well, I suppose that's fine. But make sure he behaves himself. Don't let him ruin Amanda's special day. Erin swallowed her words. Noah was always a well-mannered child. If there was a problem, it was with her mother and Amanda. Don't worry. So, what does Amanda's fiancé do? Michael Foster. He's an investment banker from a very wealthy family. Vivian's voice was filled with pride. He's perfect for Amanda. He graduated from Harvard, he's cultured, sociable. Erin rolled her eyes internally as she listened to her mother's boasting. Her mother's values were always focused on appearances and social status. The next day, Erin and Noah arrived at Vivian's luxurious suburban home. Taking a deep breath at the entrance, Erin gave Noah's shoulder a tight squeeze. It's okay, Mom, Noah said. I know Grandma and Aunt Amanda don't like us very much. Erin's heart ached at her son's perceptiveness. Children are more sensitive than adults realize. When she opened the door, she could already hear Amanda's high laughter coming from the living room. She was wearing an elegant cocktail dress, holding a glass, and talking to an unfamiliar man. Erin, Noah, you finally made it. Vivian greeted them with a cold smile. Amanda, Erin, and Noah are here. Amanda turned around and smiled at her sister, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. Erin. I'm so glad to see you. This is my fiancé, Michael Foster. Michael stood up and turned to face Erin. He was tall with dark brown hair and kind eyes. And something brushed the corner of Erin's memory. It was a face she had seen somewhere before. Nice to meet you, Erin, Michael said in a quiet voice. I've heard a lot about you from Amanda. He extended his hand, and Erin shook it. His hand was warm, and his grip was gentle. Nice to meet you too, Erin said. This is my son, Noah. Michael smiled at Noah and looked directly into the boy's eyes. Hello, Noah. I'm glad to meet you. What grade are you in? 5th grade, Noah answered, a little nervously. That's a wonderful age. When I was in 5th grade, I made a model of the solar system for the science fair. Michael's voice was gentle, and he seemed used to talking with children. Amanda cleared her throat disapprovingly. Michael, could you pour me some wine? Erin had a good impression of Michael. He seemed mild-mannered and thoughtful. It was surprising that he was engaged to someone with a self-centered personality like Amanda. During dinner, Vivian and Amanda talked endlessly about wedding preparations. The wonderful wedding dress, the high-end reception venue, the famous catering company. Erin's opinion was never sought even once. Erin, you don't need to worry about the dress since you're not a bridesmaid, Amanda said abruptly. Erin looked up in surprise. I'm not a bridesmaid. I'm sorry, but we haven't been very close for a long time, have we? Amanda's voice was filled with fake sadness. Besides, you must be busy. Being a single mother, with work and all. Vivian nodded in agreement. That's right, Erin. We don't want to burden you. Erin felt a pain in her chest but kept her expression unchanged. She was used to rejection from her family. Noah's hand grasped hers under the table. Only Michael wore an uncomfortable expression. He cleared his throat and quietly said, "But isn't family participation important? I think Erin and Noah should be part of this special day." Amanda turned to her fiancé with a surprised look. "Of course, they're invited. It's just that the bridesmaids are already set with my close friends." Erin sent Michael a grateful smile. At least he seemed to be a considerate person. After dinner, while Erin was helping with the cleanup, Michael came into the kitchen. "Can I help?" he offered. "It's fine, I'm used to it," Erin answered. "Amanda and Mom expect me to fill the practical role." Michael silently watched her for a moment. "You're different from what Amanda told me," he said quietly. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," Michael smiled. "I just hope we'll have more chances to talk with you and Noah." After he left, Erin was struck by a strange feeling. Michael's face flickered in her memory. She must have met him somewhere. But she couldn't remember when or where. In the car on the way home, Noah suddenly said, "Michael seems like a nice person. I wonder why he's marrying someone like Aunt Amanda." Erin couldn't help but laugh. "Noah, you shouldn't say things like that." But deep down, she had the same question as her son. As the wedding preparations progressed, Erin felt increasingly alienated from her family. Amanda and Vivian didn't share the wedding details with her or ask for her opinion. Still, she quietly handled the behind-the-scenes work. Addressing invitations, communicating with the venue, fine-tuning details, areas where her meticulousness as an accountant came in handy. "You're helping again." One day, Michael stood beside Erin as she worked on preparations. "Amanda seems too busy to handle these practical matters herself." "Don't worry about it. I'm good at this kind of thing," Erin shrugged. Michael observed her for a while before saying, "You know, you seem familiar somehow." Erin stopped and looked up at him. "I've been feeling the same way. But I can't quite place it." At that moment, Noah came running into the room. "Mom, Michael. I finished my homework." Michael smiled at Noah. "What kind of homework was it?" "A history project. I researched the Roman Empire," Noah answered proudly. "Really? I love history too." Michael sat down next to the boy and showed interest in his project. Erin felt a warm feeling spread in her chest as she watched the scene. Michael seemed to have a genuine interest in her son. Amanda's fiancé was clearly different from the men in the past who never bothered to meet Noah despite becoming part of her family. A week before the wedding, Michael made an unexpected phone call. "Erin, I want to talk to you about something." His voice was serious. "I want you to be the maid of honor." Erin was so surprised she lost her words. "But Amanda didn't even choose me as a bridesmaid. I asked her myself." Family is important. Especially on important days like a wedding. There was determination in Michael's voice. Amanda eventually agreed. Erin felt conflicted. She doubted her sister was truly happy about it, but she was filled with gratitude for Michael's warm gesture. The next day, Vivian called Erin in a fury. "Amanda is crying. Why did you ask Michael for such a thing?" "I didn't say anything. Michael suggested it himself." "I can't believe this," Vivian spat out. "You always make yourself look like a victim and try to ruin Amanda's life. This is her special day." Erin took a deep breath to stay calm. "I want Amanda to be happy. If she truly doesn't want me to be her maid of honor, I'll decline." "You can't decline now. Michael has already decided." Vivian's sigh was audible. Just don't stand out too much. This is Amanda's day. On the wedding day, Erin arrived at the church early with Noah. She wore a modest sky blue dress. It might have been too simple for a maid of honor, but it was out of consideration not to upset Amanda. "Mom, you look beautiful," Noah smiled. In the preparation room, Amanda was surrounded by bridesmaids, dressed in an extravagant wedding gown. When Erin entered, her sister merely glanced at her and gave a cold nod. "Well, Erin," Vivian said with pursed lips. "That dress is, well, it's just like you." The ceremony proceeded solemnly. Erin stood behind Amanda, maintaining a smile as she gazed at Michael's gentle expression. He occasionally glanced at Erin, smiling reassuringly. The reception began, with the entrance of the bride and groom, toasts, and dancing. Erin sat at a table with Noah, quietly enjoying their meal. Soon it was time for speeches. Amanda stood up and took the microphone. She looked around the room and turned her gaze toward Erin. Suddenly, her smile transformed into a malicious expression. "Everyone, thank you for coming today," Amanda said in a sweet voice. "I'm happy to share this special day with family and friends." After talking about the joy of marriage for a while, she suddenly pointed at Erin. "By the way, this is my sister Erin. A single mother who has lived without being loved by anyone." Uncomfortable laughter rippled through the venue. "Anyone want to take her in?" The blood drained from Erin's face. Noah's small hand gripped hers tightly. Just kidding," Amanda said with a laugh. Some in the audience laughed, but many shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Vivian took the microphone. "Our eldest daughter is always so serious and boring," she said in a glossy voice. "She's second-hand goods, but still usable. Comes with a defective son." This time, laughter erupted from various parts of the venue. Erin sat frozen. Tears welled up in Noah's eyes. "Mom," he said in a trembling voice. Erin slowly stood up and took her son's hand. "Let's go," she said quietly. But at that moment, from the corner of her vision, she saw Michael slowly rising. His face was red, clearly restraining his anger. The venue fell silent, all eyes turning to the groom. Michael took a deep breath and moved away from Amanda to take the microphone. His eyes caught Erin's, trying to convey something. The venue became deadly quiet. Michael's expression showed a severity never seen before. With the microphone in hand, he began to speak slowly, emphasizing each word. "Ladies and gentlemen, today has become a day when I make the most important decision of my life. However, it is not the decision you might think." The smile disappeared from Amanda's face, replaced by confusion. Vivian stood frozen. "First, let me say a word about that speech just now." Michael's voice was calm, but clearly suppressing anger. "Those words directed at Erin and Noah were cruel and thoughtless. I cannot share such values." Amanda started to open her mouth, but Michael quietly raised his hand to stop her. "Actually, there's something I want everyone to know." Michael took a deep breath and continued. "Erin and I have not met for the first time." Erin looked up in surprise. Something was starting to stir within her. The fog in her memory was gradually clearing. 10 years ago, when my sister Caroline was fighting leukemia, Erin was working as a volunteer at the hospital. Michael's voice trembled slightly. "I was 22 then, and I was saved by the kindness and strength of Erin, who was 25 at the time. During the last few months of Caroline's life, Erin continued to support her and our family." Hot tears welled up in Erin's eyes. Caroline Foster. Of course, she remembered her. A young woman diagnosed with leukemia in her mid-20s. Erin herself had experienced the same illness when she was young, and after recovery, she had started volunteering at the hospital as a way to give back. Even after Caroline passed away, Erin continued to care about our family, Michael continued. After my sister's death, it took me a long time to recover from the deep sadness. He choked on his words for a moment, then began speaking again. Then 3 years ago, I met Amanda at a party. I was attracted to her brightness and sociability. I didn't learn that Amanda was Erin's sister until after we started dating. Michael's eyes turned to Amanda, and his expression mixed with sadness and disappointment. The stories I heard about Erin from her, looking back now, were all filled with prejudice. But I wanted to believe people could change. Amanda's face began to contort with anger. Vivian had collapsed into a chair. After our engagement, I began to notice Amanda's true nature, Michael quietly continued. I was particularly shocked when I first saw Noah. He was the little boy who occasionally came to Caroline's hospital room. Erin gazed at Noah. Her son, who was 5 at the time, sometimes accompanied her hospital volunteering. He would give handmade cards to the sick people, brightening the hospital rooms with his genuine smile. 10 years ago, Noah was just a 5-year-old child, but he had a special talent for making my sister smile. Michael's voice softened. When I learned he was Erin's son, I felt it was destiny. Noah's eyes widened. I remember. I gave that lady a crayon drawing. Michael smiled. That's right, Noah. Caroline treasured your drawings until the very end. Michael's expression tightened again. During our engagement, I had doubts about Amanda's and Vivian's cold and self-centered personalities. Especially their attitude toward Erin and Noah. But I was hoping they would change. Today's speech has completely shattered that hope. Michael slowly removed his wedding ring. Gasps of surprise rose from the audience. Today, I'm canceling this marriage, he said quietly but firmly. 10 years ago, Caroline's last words to me were that real family respects and supports each other. Amanda and Vivian, you are living contrary to that teaching. Amanda suddenly screamed. This is a joke, right? Michael, what are you saying? This is no joke, Michael said quietly. I'm doing the right thing now. He walked over to Erin and Noah. I've been searching for a long time. For the kind soul I met at that hospital. He extended his hand to Erin. Let's leave together. Erin wiped away the tears streaming down her cheeks and took Michael's trembling hand. Noah also stood up and grasped Michael's other hand. Wait! Vivian shouted. Do you have any idea how much this wedding cost? Michael turned back and quietly said, I will cover all expenses. Please send the bills to my office. As the 3 of them left the venue, Michael respectfully bowed his head to the priest. I'm sorry for the disturbance. In the bright sunshine outside, Erin felt like she could breathe freely for the first time. I can't believe it. She whispered. You really don't remember Caroline? Michael gently asked. Erin closed her eyes, tracing her memories. I can't forget her smile. Especially during those last few weeks, when the pain was severe, she was always positive. Erin's voice trembled. But honestly, I didn't remember much about you. Back then, I was interacting with so many patients. I always remembered you, Michael said quietly. How much you devoted yourself to others, how strong and kind you were. After my sister passed away, I tried to find you, but I didn't know your contact information. Noah looked up at the 2 of them and asked, what are we going to do now? Michael placed his hand on the boy's shoulder. How about we have a quiet meal somewhere? And, let's talk about what happens next. Erin smiled. In her heart, a door that had been closed for a long time was slowly beginning to open. As Michael's Lexus pulled out of the church parking lot, angry shouts could be heard from behind. In the rearview mirror was the image of Amanda running with her wedding dress hitched up. Her makeup was smeared with tears, and her once perfect hairstyle was disheveled. Vivian was also chasing after her daughter, out of breath. "Michael! Come back!" Amanda's screams reached inside the car. Michael sighed deeply and looked at Erin. "Are you okay?" Erin exhaled shakily as she looked out the window at the chaotic wedding venue. Guests were confused, whispering to each other, and some were taking photos with their mobile phones. Amanda's friends were surrounding Vivian, trying to calm her down. "I don't know," Erin answered honestly. "But I want to leave this place with Noah." Noah was quiet in the back seat, but his eyes still showed traces of tears. "Mom, are you okay?" he asked in a small voice. Erin turned back and smiled at her son. "I'm fine, Noah. We're together." Michael parked the car at a small restaurant along the coast. From the terrace seats, they could see the calm sea, and the evening sky was tinged with gold. The three sat in silence for a while, staring at their menus. There were too many emotions to put into words. "I'm sorry," Michael broke the silence, "for creating this situation." Erin shook her head. "You have nothing to apologize for. Rather, thank you for protecting us." She turned her gaze to her son. "Especially Noah." "I'm fine," Noah said. His voice was trying to be strong, but his small hands were visibly shaking. "I know what Grandma and Aunt Amanda said isn't true." Michael gently placed his hand on Noah's shoulder. "You're a special child, Noah. Do you know how much Caroline looked forward to your visits? She called you her little son." Noah's face brightened. "Really?" "Yes, it's true," Erin also smiled. "Caroline's face always lit up when you came." Their food was served. Erin ate with a sense of security she hadn't felt in a long time. Michael's quiet presence was strangely comforting. "Michael, tell me," Erin hesitantly asked. "Why did you get engaged to Amanda? Did you really love her?" Michael thought for a moment before answering honestly. "At first, I was attracted to her brightness. After losing Caroline, my world had sunk into darkness. Amanda was full of energy, and being with her made everything around me seem brighter." He continued, turning his water glass. "And when I learned she was your sister, I felt something like fate. Even if I couldn't remember you, maybe I felt some connection." Michael smiled ruefully. "But as time passed, I realized Amanda's brightness was superficial. She constantly sought attention and lacked compassion. Especially toward her family. Yet you still plan to marry her?" Erin asked curiously. Michael shrugged embarrassedly. "I believed people could change. I tried to see her good side. And..." He hesitated. "And..." "To be honest, it was difficult to change a decision once made. The expectations from others were also high." Michael looked up and gazed at Erin. "But today, seeing you and Noah treated that way, I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to follow my true feelings." His mobile phone rang, and Amanda's name appeared on the screen. Michael sighed and ignored the call. But it soon started ringing again. "Maybe you should answer it," Erin suggested. Michael reluctantly answered the phone. Amanda's shouting voice leaked from the speaker. Erin and Noah tried to focus on their meal, but they could hear Amanda's fierce accusations. Michael responded in a calm voice, though occasionally showing a tired expression. "Amanda, I've made my decision," he finally said firmly. "Let's talk through lawyers tomorrow. Don't contact me again tonight." After hanging up, a heavy silence fell. "Sorry," Michael said apologetically. Erin shook her head. "Don't apologize. This situation is complicated, isn't it?" "Where are we now?" Noah suddenly asked. The adults exchanged smiles at his innocent question. "Now?" Michael considered. "Maybe at the beginning of a new path." After dinner, Michael drove Erin and Noah home. Stopping the car in front of the apartment, he walked with Erin to the entrance. "Thank you for everything today," Erin said quietly. The moonlight dyed her hair silver. "Thank you too," Michael looked straight into her eyes. "Can I see you again tomorrow? The three of us?" Erin smiled. "Yes, of course." "Mom," asked Michael. Noah suddenly appeared at the entrance. "He said he'll tell me all about Caroline." Michael laughed. "Of course, Noah. I promise." Erin stood at the entrance, watching Michael return to his car. As he turned back and smiled at her, a warmth spread through her heart. Upon entering the apartment, there were several angry messages from Vivian on the answering machine. "Erin, how could you do this to us? Amanda is hurt. You brainwashed Michael, didn't you?" Erin sighed and deleted the messages. "Noah, take a bath. You have school tomorrow." "Mom," Noah tugged at Erin's sleeve. "Do you like Michael?" Erin was surprised by her son's straightforward question. "I don't know him well yet, Noah. But he seems like a good person." "I like him," Noah said with conviction. "He's Caroline's brother, and he protected us. And he was watching your smile." Erin stroked her son's head. "You're very observant." That night, after Noah had gone to bed, Erin was looking out the living room window. There was a mixture of confusion and hope in her heart. Her cell phone rang with a message from Michael. "Did you get home safely? Is Noah okay?" Erin smiled as she replied, "We're both fine. Thank you." A reply came immediately. "I'm glad. Good night, Erin. How about coffee after you drop Noah off at school tomorrow?" Erin felt her heart beat faster. "Yes, that would be nice. Good night, Michael." She held her phone to her chest and exhaled deeply. The family rift, the wedding chaos, and this unexpected reunion. Everything was unfolding rapidly. But strangely, a peace she hadn't felt in a long time filled her heart. 1 year later in autumn, with the beautiful maple leaves changing color, Erin was hanging the sign for her new accounting office in Maple Park. The words, "Johnson Financial Services," gleamed in the morning light. The small business she had started with Michael's encouragement and support had gained a local reputation in just a few months. "Mom, hurry up. We'll be late for school." Noah called out energetically. Now 11 years old, he had grown taller and wore a confident expression. Selected as captain of the soccer team, he was now popular at school. "I'm coming." Erin smiled at him. The changes in life were evident in her as well. Her shoulder-length hair had regained a healthy shine, and there was a light of confidence in her eyes. "I'll drive him," Michael poked his head out from the entrance of their new home. Since last Christmas, the three had been living together. They weren't engaged yet, but their bond deepened day by day. "But don't you have an important meeting today?" Erin asked worriedly. Michael shrugged. "Being 30 minutes late won't end the world. It's Noah's important day." They stopped by a small cemetery in the center of the city. After placing fresh flowers on Caroline's grave, the three quietly put their hands together. "I kept my promise, sis," Michael whispered softly. Erin held his hand, and Noah placed a small stone on the gravestone. It was a special custom between Caroline and Noah. "I still feel like she's watching over us," Noah said quietly. Erin leaned against Michael, resting her head on his shoulder. "Thank you, Caroline," she said in her heart. A few miles away, Amanda was packing her belongings from her luxury apartment. After the wedding scandal, she had gradually become estranged from society, and her former friends had drifted away. Especially after Vivian tried to file a lawsuit, even after Michael had paid for all the wedding expenses, she lost her last supporters. Amanda was preparing to move to a small apartment. She could no longer maintain her lavish lifestyle and had to learn to live within her own income for the first time. The same was true for Vivian. Her friends avoided her, and her life full of vanity gradually became a lonely one. Occasionally, she tried to contact Aaron, but always received a cold response. She was finally beginning to understand that her actions had created an irreparable rift. On Christmas Eve evening, Aaron, Michael, and Noah were relaxing in front of the fireplace. Noah was already asleep, dreaming of waiting for presents. Michael quietly took a small box from his pocket. "Actually, I have something I want to give you." Aaron stared at the box in surprise. When she opened it, there was a beautiful emerald ring. "This is..." "It was Caroline's," Michael said quietly. "She said, when you meet someone truly special, give this to her." Tears welled up in Aaron's eyes. "Really? You and Noah have brought light to my life." Michael took her hand. "Will you marry me? Let's become a real family." "A real family is connected not just by blood, but by heart," Aaron smiled, speaking Caroline's words. "Yes," she answered. "We're already a family, aren't we?" Outside the window, snow had quietly begun to fall, as if announcing a new year and a new beginning. The view from the 45th floor of the Boston high-rise office building was a small daily comfort for Megan Wilson. She had established herself as a senior financial consultant at Morgan Stanley. The autumn foliage visible from her window momentarily drew her thoughts away from reality. "Ms. Wilson, I've completed the portfolio analysis for the Johnson family." Brought back to the present by her assistant's voice, Megan smiled gently. "Thank you, Charlie. I'll review it right away." On her desk, papers were arranged methodically, and her computer screen displayed complex spreadsheets. Megan had shown a special talent for numbers since childhood and was the only one in her family to attend college, earning an MBA from Harvard Business School. Her parents, George and Martha, were a high school teacher and a part-time nurse. While they preached the value of education, they were lenient with her sister Taylor but strict with Megan. In the quiet of her office, Megan unconsciously rubbed the ring finger of her left hand. A wedding ring should have been there. Her divorce 3 years ago was one of the most painful events in her life. Despite numerous fertility treatments, they couldn't conceive, and the pressure gradually eroded their marriage. Her desperate wish to have children remained unfulfilled, and eventually, her ex-husband Brian left her in search of a normal family. Megan took a sip of coffee and checked her phone screen. 3 unread messages from her mother. She sighed deeply. Probably about her sister Taylor again. Taylor had dropped out of high school and spent her days partying without holding a steady job. Her parents doted on her, constantly saying, young people should enjoy life freely. Meanwhile, they expected Megan to be the responsible sister and clean up after Taylor's messes. Last year, Taylor became pregnant after a brief relationship. The man disappeared quickly. Her parents declared their full support for Taylor, respecting her decisions. Megan inwardly recognized that most of this support came from her own wallet. After finishing work, Megan headed to her apartment. Instead of the luxury condominiums where many of her colleagues lived, she had chosen a modest 2-bedroom apartment on the north side of town. The affordable rent was important to her because most of her income went toward supporting her family and saving for the future. "Good evening, Megan." Edwin, the building manager, greeted her warmly. He was a gentleman who looked forward to the homemade cookies Megan brought every weekend. "Good evening, Edwin. How was your day?" She smiled genuinely. This small conversation made the end of her day a little warmer. Entering her apartment, Megan took off her suit, removed her contact lenses, and put on her glasses. This space was her sanctuary. Simple, functional furniture, a few beautiful landscape photographs on the walls, and potted herbs on her small balcony that she carefully tended. This modest lifestyle was her own choice. Taking lemon water from the refrigerator, she checked her mother's messages. "Megan, can you come for dinner tomorrow? Taylor has an important announcement. Come at 6. Waiting for your reply." She shrugged. She could imagine what this meant. Taylor had probably found another new dream. Last time, she announced she wanted to become a beautician and asked Megan to pay for school. Of course, she got bored after 2 weeks. Megan replied, "All right, I'll be there at 6. She opened her monthly budget spreadsheet and reviewed her expenses. Daycare costs for Taylor's son Noah, assistance with her parents' mortgage, her father's diabetes treatment, care for her mother's arthritis, repayment of her father's previous gambling debts. The list went on and on. Finishing her calculations, Megan sat by the window and gazed at the city lights. Nobody in her family knew that she had been quietly making payments for 10 years. Without thanks or recognition, she was only gossiped about behind her back as the rich sister or the stingy single woman. She smiled bitterly. Her family didn't understand her at all. For her, financially supporting her family was both a responsibility and an expression of love. She had given up trying to make them understand. Looking out the window, Megan prepared herself mentally for tomorrow's important announcement. Whatever happened, she intended to respond calmly as always. The next evening, Megan stood at the entrance of her parents' house. The white 2-story home where she had grown up increasingly needed repairs. She noticed areas where the paint was peeling and the garden was neglected. She took a deep breath and knocked on the door. "Megan, you came." Martha opened the door with a slightly tense expression. From inside, the energetic voice of Taylor's son Noah could be heard. "I promised I would," Megan answered quietly and entered the house. In the living room, her father George was relaxing in front of the television, and Taylor was sitting on the floor playing with 2-year-old Noah. Megan politely greeted everyone and presented Noah with a teddy bear. "Here's a new toy, Noah." Megan spoke softly to her nephew. The reality of her inability to have children sent a pain through her chest, but she tried not to show it in her expression. Noah innocently smiled and hugged the teddy bear. Dinner started in a pleasant atmosphere, but around dessert time, Taylor abruptly changed the subject. "I actually have a major announcement." Taylor looked directly at her sister. "Noah's daycare said they're raising their fees next month. Also, I want to attend a special school to become a beautician." Megan listened silently. She already sensed the true purpose of this important announcement. George cleared his throat and said, "So, Megan, we have a little favor to ask you. You want me to cover the daycare and school fees, right?" Megan said calmly. "That's right," Martha interjected. "Since you're financially successful, it's only natural for you to help the family. Taylor is raising a child on her own." Megan carefully chose her words before speaking. "I have my own life. I'm already doing a lot." "What are you doing?" George's voice grew louder. "You're only thinking about yourself. Living in a luxury apartment, looking down on us." Megan frowned. "I don't live in a luxury apartment. And..." "No excuses," Martha interrupted. "Taylor wants to study for her future. If you help a little, both her and Noah's lives will improve." Taylor smiled provocatively and said, "Since you're a defective woman who can't even have children, why don't you pay? Looking at my child is the least you can do to contribute to the family." Those words froze Megan's heart. The mockery of her divorce and infertility hurt her more than she could have imagined. However, she suppressed her emotions and tried to respond rationally. "Taylor, that's too cruel," Megan said quietly. "My financial situation isn't as comfortable as you all think. My monthly expenses are..." "Liar." George slammed the table. "Your salary is 3 times mine. What are you doing for your family? Megan was surprised. Dad, I help with your mortgage, medical expenses, and… What are you talking about? Martha looked confused. We pay for everything ourselves. Megan was stunned. Her parents seemed completely unaware of her financial support over the past 10 years. Probably, her father had processed her remittances as household income and given her mother a different explanation. Mom, I've been financially supporting the family for years. I'm not bringing this up to talk about it, just to say that I can't take on any more burden. I don't believe you. Taylor raised her voice. I'm a single mother. I don't live luxuriously like you. Megan's patience reached its limit. Taylor, I'm paying for Noah's daycare too. Most of my salary goes to the family. You just don't know about it. After a moment of silence, George's face turned red with anger. What are you saying? Are you trying to embarrass me? Megan was confused. Dad, I'm just stating facts. Enough. George stood up. If you won't give us money, fine. But as a family member, you should be ashamed. Not being able to help your sister and nephew. I'm doing everything I can, Megan quietly insisted. But I can't continue bearing unlimited expenses. Martha shook her head with a sad face. I don't want such an ungrateful daughter. You're no longer family. Tears welled up in Megan's eyes at those words. George went upstairs, returned with Megan's coat and bag, and threw them at the front door. Don't show your face again. Taylor is enough for us. He tossed Megan's belongings out the front door. Taylor laughed triumphantly, saying, Goodbye. We'll be fine without you. Megan stood frozen, trying to understand what had happened. She never imagined that all her years of sacrifice, everything she had given up, and her unconditional support for her family would end like this. I understand, she said quietly, picking up her belongings. If this is what you all want. No one tried to stop her. Megan left the house holding back tears. Once in her car, her emotions finally overflowed, and she began to cry quietly. That night, back in her apartment, Megan took a long shower, trying to sort through her feelings. For 10 years, she had sacrificed much for her family. She had put aside her own dreams, luxuries, and sometimes even necessities. Yet, her family called her ungrateful. Megan opened her computer and checked her bank account. Then she made a decision. She clicked the button to stop all automatic payments, her parents' mortgage, Taylor's daycare expenses, her father's medical bills, and all other financial support to her family. It's over, she whispered quietly. It was a cold, clear decision marking the end of 10 years of sacrifice and support. For the first time, Megan felt the freedom to live just for herself. It was a painful freedom, but a necessary step. 2 weeks passed. She immersed herself in work and began taking time for herself that she had postponed for years. Her colleagues noticed the change. She smiled more often, started going to the gym during lunch breaks, and even joined colleagues for dinner on Friday nights. Megan, could you check this report? Her boss Brenda approached her desk. Of course, Megan smiled. Inwardly, she felt guilty about financially cutting off her family. But at the same time, she experienced a sense of relief, like a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Released from the pressure of sacrificing her own life for 10 years, her bank account had a substantial balance for the first time. Meanwhile, a different reality was unfolding at the Wilson home. George Wilson was just checking the mail. He opened an envelope marked urgent in red, and his face changed color. Martha, he called his wife. Do you know what this is? Martha came from the kitchen and took the envelope. It was a payment reminder for their mortgage. Your payment is 2 weeks overdue. Please respond immediately, it read. That's strange, Martha frowned. There was no problem last month. George scratched his head with a confused expression. I'll call the bank. On the phone, the bank representative explained calmly, Mr. Wilson, your automatic payment has been cancelled. For the past 10 years, it was paid from another account, but that registration was cancelled 2 weeks ago. George was speechless. Another account? Whose? From Ms. Megan Wilson's account. After hanging up, George and Martha stared at each other in shock. Megan had been paying their mortgage. What she said was true. That afternoon, more bad news arrived. There was a call from George's diabetes specialist. Mr. Wilson, tomorrow's appointment has been cancelled, the nurse said on the phone. Why? I didn't change my appointment. There seems to be a payment issue. Your insurance subsidy has been stopped. George was stunned. His expensive specialist medical fees had insurance coverage and a copay, but the copay had always mysteriously been paid. Could that have been Megan too? The same day, Martha's in-home care nurse for her arthritis also cancelled her visit. The reason was the same, payment issues. In the evening, Taylor rushed into her parents' house crying, carrying Noah and looking distressed. The landlord came, she said with a trembling voice. He said the guarantor cancelled the contract, so I need to pay a new security deposit or move out. Guarantor? Martha was confused. Who was the guarantor? I don't know, but I got an email notification this morning. Taylor explained through tears. The daycare also contacted me saying next month's tuition hasn't been paid. While the family was in turmoil, the doorbell rang. George opened it to find an unfamiliar man. Are you George Wilson? The man asked coldly. I'm Jameson from Credit Recovery. I'm here to discuss your unpaid debts. The color drained from George's face. He had gambling debts he had hidden from his family for years. Mysteriously, the payments had continued monthly, so there had been no problems. Dad, what's he talking about? Taylor peeked out from the living room. Just a small debt. Don't worry, we'll manage, George couldn't hide his distress. That evening, a family meeting was held around the kitchen table. A pile of bills had accumulated, and everyone was speechless at the total amount. How have we been paying all these bills? Martha questioned her husband. George's shoulders slumped. Honestly, I don't know. The money was always enough. It was paid by automatic bank withdrawals. What about Dad's debts? Taylor asked. Those too, somehow they were being taken care of, he held his head. Taylor suddenly said in a quiet voice, wasn't Megan paying for everything? A heavy silence fell over the room. Impossible, George denied. She didn't do anything for us. But everything started happening after she left. Taylor continued. The bank, the doctors, my apartment, the daycare, was Megan supporting it all? Martha slowly stood up and went to the old filing cabinet. She took out several years' worth of bank statements and began examining them carefully. There were regular deposit records. The sender's name was M. Wilson. 10 years. Martha whispered with a shocked expression. Megan has been sending money every month. George covered his face with both hands. Why did she keep quiet? Why didn't she tell us? She did, Taylor answered quietly. That day, Megan told us. But we didn't listen. I called her defective. Her voice choked. That night, the Wilson family faced the truth for the first time. They realized that Megan had been quietly supporting the family for 10 years. That her successful life was actually modest. And how cruel they had been to her. The next morning, Taylor made a decision. She left Noah with her mother and went to look for Megan. She first went to her apartment, but the manager Edwin told her, she's out. Could you please give her a message? Taylor pleaded. You're the one who hurt her. Edwin looked at her with cold eyes. Megan is a wonderful person. She bakes cookies for me once a week. She's always thinking of others. You family members didn't appreciate her value. Taylor bowed her head. Yes, we were foolish. She's probably at work, Edwin said finally. Taylor took a taxi to Megan's office. Looking up at the high-rise building, she took a deep breath. She was determined to reflect on her past arrogance and insensitivity and apologize sincerely. When she found Megan, tears were flowing from Taylor's eyes. Her former arrogance was gone, and she said with a trembling voice, "Please, help us." On the 45th floor of Morgan Stanley, morning sunlight streamed into Megan's office. She was focused on analyzing investment portfolios. For the past 2 weeks, she had immersed herself in work to ease the pain of separating from her family. Even when she occasionally felt a pain in her chest, she told herself it was the right decision. Ms. Wilson, her assistant Charlie called over the intercom. "You have a visitor." "A Ms. Taylor Wilson." Megan's hands stopped. Just hearing her sister's name vividly brought back memories of that night. Her throat went dry. "Could you turn her away?" Megan answered calmly. "She seems quite distraught." Charlie's voice was confused. "She appears to be crying." Megan sighed deeply. "All right. I'll see her for 5 minutes." Shortly after, the office door opened, and Taylor entered. She looked different from what Megan had imagined. Gone was her usual confident attitude, her face was pale with fatigue and anxiety, wearing no makeup. Her eyes were red from crying, and she desperately clutched a cheap handbag. "Megan." Taylor's voice was trembling. "What is it?" Megan didn't rise from her chair and gave her sister a cold look. "What do you want from someone who's not family?" Taylor cried as she forced out words. "Please, help us, our house is about to be foreclosed. Mom and Dad are sick and can't buy medicine. We can't pay for Noah's daycare." Megan maintained an expressionless face as she listened to Taylor's words. In her heart, sympathy and anger were mixed. The feeling that she couldn't abandon her family conflicted with her anger over the humiliating treatment that night. "I see," Megan finally spoke. "What do you want me to do?" "Please, help us," Taylor pleaded again. "I was wrong. Without you, we are." "Why did you come to me?" Megan asked calmly. "I thought I was useless and defective." Taylor was shocked by Megan's words and raised her face. Her eyes showed remorse. "You've been supporting everything." Taylor's voice was hoarse. Megan opened her desk drawer and took out a thick file. "Look at this." Taylor received the file with trembling hands. It contained 10 years of payment records, loan guarantee documents, medical expense receipts, and debt repayment statements, all neatly arranged. Everything was for the family. "All this was you?" Taylor stared at the documents in disbelief. "Yes," Megan answered quietly. "Dad's mortgage, medical expenses, gambling debt repayments. Mom's arthritis treatment. Your apartment guarantee and Noah's daycare costs. I paid for everything." The color drained from Taylor's face. "But, why did you keep quiet?" Megan gave a slightly ironic smile. "At first, because Dad would be embarrassed. Then, because I realized no one wanted to know. You all thought of me as the rich sister or the stingy career woman, right?" Taylor was speechless and collapsed into a chair. "We did terrible things." "Yes," Megan said matter-of-factly. "For 10 years, I was never thanked. Just criticized, ridiculed, and then thrown out." A heavy silence filled the office. Outside the window, the city of Boston was in its usual hustle and bustle. Between the two sisters lay years of misunderstanding and mutual hurt. Megan, Taylor said quietly. After you left, everything started falling apart. I didn't realize how important you were. I only understood after losing you. Looking out the window, Megan said, that's ironic. Dad can't buy his diabetes medication, and he's getting worse, Taylor continued. Mom's arthritis has worsened, and she can barely move. I tried to find work, but because you have no qualifications, Megan said calmly. Taylor nodded. Yes. I didn't even finish high school. She raised her face. Megan, I've been living without thinking about anything. The hurtful words I said, especially about children, please forgive me. Megan unconsciously touched the ring finger of her left hand, where her wedding ring had been. Taylor's words cut into her deepest wound. Didn't you know? Megan asked quietly. How much I wanted children. How many fertility treatments I underwent. That it was the reason for my divorce. Taylor answered with a trembling voice, I didn't know. I only thought about myself. She added through tears, you were always so kind to Noah. I sometimes wondered why. Noah is an innocent child, Megan said. He's my nephew. I love him. Taylor looked up. Megan, how can I get your forgiveness? We need your help. But we'll never take you for granted again. I promise. Megan was silent for a long time. Various emotions swirled in her heart. Anger, hurt, and deep love. She loved her family. That hadn't changed. But she also knew she couldn't return to the previous one-sided relationship. Taylor, Megan finally spoke. Whether I help you is up to me. But first, I need to talk to the whole family. Taylor's eyes lit up with hope. Anything you say. First, we need to tell our parents the truth, Megan said with a stern expression. Including Dad's gambling problem. Taylor asked with a surprised look, gambling problem. Dad has had a gambling addiction for years, Megan explained. I've been covering that too. Dad has hidden it from Mom, but that time is over. Taylor nodded with a shocked expression. I understand, we'll tell them everything. And, Megan continued, we can't go back to how things were before. If I help you, there are conditions. Taylor, you need to study seriously and get a proper job. Dad needs to get treatment for his gambling addiction. And everyone needs to stop wasteful spending. Taylor nodded with a serious expression. I understand. I really want to change. For Noah's sake too. And finally, Megan stood up, I'm not your bank. I can help, but I won't carry everything. Everyone must take responsibility. Taylor stood up and took a step toward her sister. Megan. I'm truly sorry. I was arrogant and foolish. Megan felt the emotional wall she had built over the years gradually crumbling. She tried to maintain her composure, but her heart was moved by her sister's sincere apology. Let's have a family meeting, Megan said quietly. Tonight, at my apartment. Bring our parents. Tears welled up in Taylor's eyes. Thank you, for giving us a chance. Megan nodded slightly. I haven't forgiven you yet. But, your family. Before leaving the office, Taylor turned back and said in a small voice, you're not defective. You're the strongest and kindest person among us. Noah is lucky to have an aunt like you. After she left, Megan stood by the window, gazing into the distance. For 10 years, she had devoted herself to her family. But now, for the first time, she saw the possibility of building a true family bond. It wouldn't be an easy journey. It would take time to rebuild trust. However, a small light of hope glowed in Megan's heart. Hope for a new relationship with her family, one where they respected each other. She took a deep breath, preparing to take a step toward tomorrow. 3 years later, in a small park in suburban Boston. The autumn sunlight shone golden, and fallen leaves danced in the wind. Megan sat on a bench watching Noah play on the equipment. Now 5 years old, her energetic nephew ran around, occasionally shouting, "Aunt Megan, watch me." "Amazing, Noah." Megan waved back. "He's really grown," said a voice. Turning around, she saw Taylor approaching with 2 warm coffees. She looked like a different person from 3 years ago. A confident expression, neat business casual attire, and above all, a quiet composure in her eyes. "Thank you," Megan accepted the coffee. "How was your interview today?" Taylor answered with a smile, "It went well. I'll likely become a permanent employee in the hospital's medical administration department. Much better conditions than my current contract position." The sisters sat side by side, quietly looking at the scenery. Over these 3 years, their family had changed dramatically. Beginning with that night's family meeting. At first, it was a confrontation with harsh reality. Their father's confession of gambling addiction, their mother's surprise and anger, and the full picture of the debts the entire family had accumulated. Megan decided to support her family with conditions. Taylor attended night school and obtained a medical administration qualification. Their parents began a modest lifestyle, and George received treatment for his gambling addiction. The first year was particularly difficult, with many near relapses. But this time, the family was united. "How are Mom and Dad today?" Megan asked. "Dad's blood sugar is stable. Mom says her new treatment has reduced her joint pain," Taylor answered. "Last week, they said they paid off their last debt." Megan smiled. "That's good." "Megan," Taylor looked at her sister with a serious expression. "Without you, what would have become of us?" "That's in the past," Megan said gently. "What's important is what everyone has learned." Taylor nodded. She now runs a support group for single mothers, helping women in similar situations. Her former arrogance had turned to humility, and she passed on the lessons learned from her sister to others. "Will Daniel be coming to dinner next week?" Taylor asked. Megan blushed. Daniel was a pediatrician she had met a year ago, and they had built a serious relationship. "Yes, he's looking forward to it." "How about your adoption application?" "It's progressing," Megan's eyes sparkled. "We should be at the interview stage soon." Noah ran over and jumped onto their laps. "Aunt, Mom, I want ice cream." The sisters laughed together. Taylor gently stroked Noah's hair and said, "Noah, what do you say to Aunt Megan?" "Thank you for always helping us," Noah said innocently. Megan felt a warmth in her chest. Sometimes the most beautiful gifts come from the most painful places. Her family had almost broken apart but was rebuilt stronger and healthier. "Let's go get some ice cream," Megan stood up and took Noah's hand. Walking through the park at dusk, Megan quietly savored a sense of satisfaction. She had lost some things, but what she gained was even greater. A true family bond, mutual understanding and respect, and above all, the strength to recognize her own worth. This was her story. The story of Megan Wilson, who was hurt, cast out, and then recovered. The morning sunlight streaming through the window of a small house in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, gently illuminated Janet Watson's tired face as she sat at the kitchen table. She took a sip of coffee and glanced at the wall clock. It was almost 7 o'clock, time to wake up her son Michael. "Michael, time to get up," she called toward the second floor. "You'll be late for school." There was no answer. Janet sighed and began climbing the stairs. When she gently opened the door to her 10-year-old son's room, Michael was still asleep, wrapped in his blanket. In the corner of the room, robot parts were scattered, half assembled. "Stayed up late again," Janet whispered and gently shook her son's shoulder. Michael, it's school time. Wake up. Michael slowly opened his eyes, revealing an anxious expression. I have a math test today. Janet tenderly stroked her son's brown hair. We studied together yesterday. You'll be fine. Michael nodded silently, but there was no confidence in his eyes. School performance was his weakness, especially math. Sometimes his classmates called him slowpoke, and he usually spent recess alone. Janet, despite being busy with her job at the accounting firm, tried desperately to help Michael with his homework, attend teacher conferences, and support his growth. However, being a single mother was much harder than she had imagined. The 3 years since her husband Thomas died in a car accident had been the most difficult period of her life. After hurriedly finishing breakfast, Janet drove Michael to school. Do your best, she encouraged him. Michael showed a slight smile and headed toward the school building with his heavy backpack. Watching his small back walk away, Janet felt a tightness in her chest. In the car on her way to work, her cell phone rang. Her sister Amy's name appeared on the screen. Good morning, Amy, Janet answered. Janet. Perfect timing, Amy's voice was full of energy. I wanted to confirm the details for Brittany's birthday party this Saturday. You and Michael can come, right? Janet hesitated for a moment. Gatherings with Amy's family always brought complicated emotions. Yes, of course we'll be there. Amy was a successful lawyer. Her husband James, a real estate developer, had just built a new home in Cedar Rapids' most affluent neighborhood. Their daughter Brittany, also 10 like Michael, was known as a top student at school. She won math competitions, received spelling bee awards, and was constantly showered with praise from the family. Wonderful. Amy continued. Mom and Dad will be there, of course, and a few other relatives too. Brittany is so excited. Janet smiled, but the smile couldn't be transmitted through the phone. I understand. Is there anything I should bring? Nothing needed. Just you and Michael being there. Amy paused for a moment and changed her tone. By the way, how is Michael doing? School. Janet's stomach tightened at the question. Well, he's doing his best in his own way. I see. There was obvious sympathy in Amy's voice. If Brittany can help him with anything, just let me know. She got another 100 on her math test recently. Thanks, but we're fine, Janet quickly tried to end the conversation. I'm on my way to work. See you Saturday. After hanging up, Janet gripped the steering wheel tightly. Amy probably meant no harm, but her words always felt like sharp needles. When she visited her parents' house for weekend lunch, such pain became even more vivid. Martha and David Watson had lived in Cedar Rapids for over 40 years. David was a retired high school teacher, and Martha a former nurse. Michael, how was your recent math test? Martha asked during the meal. Michael remained silent, continuing to play with his mashed potatoes using his fork. He's trying his best, Janet answered quietly. Trying isn't enough, Martha shook her head. Do you know what place Brittany got in the state math competition recently? First place, Janet answered automatically. She had already heard this story multiple times. Yes, first place. Martha proclaimed proudly. Amy's child is always excellent. David, she inherited your teacher genes. David nodded with satisfaction. Brittany is a special child. I look forward to her future. Janet glanced at her son. Michael continued eating in silence, his shoulders slumped, eyes fixed on his plate. Her heart ached for her son. Michael got a good evaluation on his science experiment last week. Janet tried to change the direction of the conversation. That's nice, Martha said, but without enthusiasm. But basic academic skills are important. What will he do in the future if he can't do math? David nodded in agreement. Education is the most important thing in this family. It's the Watson family tradition. Janet didn't argue further. She was tired of this pattern that had persisted for years. For her parents, Amy and her family were symbols of success, while Janet and Michael were, what? Failures. Unfortunate exceptions. On the way home, Michael unusually spoke up. Don't Grandma and Grandpa like me? Janet caught her breath. Of course they like you, Michael. They just have old-fashioned ideas. They don't understand that school grades aren't everything. Michael stared out the window. But Brittany is smart, isn't she? Not like me. You're smart too, just in different ways, Janet said without taking her eyes off the road. They'd be amazed if they knew about your robots. Michael shrugged slightly. Maybe. As the week passed, Saturday approached. Amy's text message said the party would start at 2 p.m. and would also serve as a housewarming. Janet wrapped Brittany's present, a science experiment kit, fixed Michael's hair, and prepared for the party. Amy and James's new home was in Willow Creek Estates, Cedar Rapids' most upscale neighborhood. The two-story white mansion was surrounded by a spacious front yard and well-maintained gardens. When Janet parked her old sedan, Michael stared at the new house through the window, his mouth slightly open. It's really big, he whispered. Janet smiled. Yes, but the size of a house doesn't measure the amount of happiness inside. When they rang the doorbell, Amy greeted them wearing an elegant dress. Janet, Michael. So glad you could come. Please come in. Inside, the house was already bustling with relatives and friends. Colorful balloons and ribbons hung from the ceiling, and a large banner reading, "Happy Birthday, Brittany," decorated the living room wall. A group of children were making noise in front of a gaming console, while adults enjoyed conversation in the kitchen and dining areas with champagne glasses in hand. Brittany's in the backyard with her friends, Amy said, then pointed to a table. Put the present there. We'll have cake soon. While Janet was placing the present, Michael quietly retreated to a corner of the room. Instead of joining the other children, he sat in an empty chair and took out a small electronic puzzle he had brought. Janet, you made it. Martha's voice echoed as Janet's mother approached with her husband David. Isn't this house amazing? Amy and James have done well for themselves. Yes, it's lovely, Janet agreed. Oh, why isn't Michael playing with the other children? Martha frowned when she spotted her grandson. Why don't you introduce him to Brittany's friends? Janet answered quietly, he's shy. Give him time. As the party progressed, Brittany became the center of attention. With a bright smile, she opened present after present, thanking everyone politely for each. James captured everything with an expensive camera, while Amy stood proudly beside her daughter. I'd do anything for my wonderful granddaughter, Martha declared loudly, putting her arm around Brittany's shoulders. I've never seen such a smart and beautiful child. At the height of the celebration, everyone gathered around the dining table where an elaborate meal was served. Michael sat quietly next to Janet, barely speaking. Michael, Martha suddenly called from across the table. How was your recent math test? The conversation quieted as all eyes turned to the boy. Michael sank deep into his chair and answered in a small voice, it was okay. Okay isn't good enough, David sighed. Excellence is expected in this family. Janet squeezed her son's hand. Michael is trying very hard. Grandma, look. Brittany suddenly exclaimed, pulling a shining gold medal from her new bag. I got this at the state math competition last week. Wonderful. Martha cheered. Let me see it. Amy smiled with satisfaction. Brittany's teacher says she has a special talent. She's always at the top of her class. The atmosphere at the table grew heavy, with an uncomfortable silence. Janet felt something bitter in the back of her throat. Michael's expression froze, and he remained motionless, staring at his plate. Speaking of which, Martha broke the silence, laughing loudly. Only the smart sister's child is a true grandchild. Teach some studying to this family's embarrassment. Janet's heart nearly stopped. Some relatives at the table looked uncomfortable, but no one intervened. Amy, seemingly unaware of the gravity of the statement, joined in proudly. That's because she has big sister's genes. There's no hope. Laughter rose from parts of the table, sounding like sharp knives to Janet's ears. She trembled with anger but couldn't find her words. Michael slowly stood up. His small body was shaking, and tears glistened in his eyes. Am I really an embarrassment to the family? His voice echoed throughout the room. For a moment, everyone fell silent. Amy looked at her sister with a confused expression. David uncomfortably averted his eyes, and Martha pursed her lips. Of course not. Janet finally regained her voice and placed her hand on her son's shoulder. Her eyes burned with anger and sadness, but instead of exploding, she chose to protect her son. You're a wonderful child, Michael. The party continued in an awkward atmosphere. Cake was served, songs were sung, and Brittany blew out her candles. However, for Janet and Michael, the celebratory atmosphere was permanently broken. Michael took refuge in the bathroom, and Janet followed to comfort him. She stood in front of the closed door and knocked gently. Michael, are you okay? Sobbing sounds came from inside. Why am I no good? Why can't I be like Brittany? Janet felt her heart being torn apart. Michael, open the door. The door slowly opened, and her son appeared with tear-blurred eyes. Janet hugged him tightly. It's okay to be who you are. Being different isn't bad. But Grandma and Grandpa and Aunt Amy. They're wrong, Janet said, looking into her son's eyes. They just don't know the real you yet. Michael trembled in his mother's arms. Janet made a decision. This wouldn't end here. It was time to tell the truth. When Janet and Michael returned to the party, dessert time had begun. An elaborate ice cream cake was placed in the center of the table, and the children's eyes sparkled with anticipation. On the surface, everything seemed to have returned to normal. However, inside Janet, a quiet flame of anger continued to burn. Michael sat down silently, keeping his eyes down while poking at a small piece of cake with his fork. Across the room, Brittany was laughing with her friends, talking about her new presents. After dessert, we'll play games in the garden, Amy announced. James has prepared a wonderful treasure hunt. Awesome! Brittany burst with joy. I love treasure hunts. Martha gently stroked her granddaughter's head, then shifted her gaze to Michael. Michael, this is a good opportunity. Why don't you join Brittany? You could learn a lot from her. The words were disguised as kindness, but their underlying meaning was clear. Janet bit her lip. Yes, Amy agreed. Michael, make sure you study hard for your next test. Don't bring shame to this family. You should learn from my daughter. She knows how to make an effort. That was the limit of Janet's patience. She slowly stood up, causing silence in the room. All eyes turned to her. Amy, Mom, her voice was quiet but sharp. That's enough. What do you mean? Martha showed a confused expression. Janet reached into her handbag and pulled out a glossy photograph from an inside pocket. She placed it in the center of the table. This is what you call the family's embarrassment. The photo showed Michael holding a large trophy, beaming with a gap-toothed smile. Next to him was a small robot with complex mechanisms, and in the background, a banner reading National Junior Robotics Competition was visible. The room suddenly fell silent. Amy and Brittany were stunned, David and Martha were speechless. Even the children stopped their conversations and sent curious glances. When was this? David was the first to squeeze out words. Last fall, Janet answered calmly. Michael won first place in the junior division of the national competition. Out of more than 100 participants. But, why didn't you tell us? Martha asked with a confused expression. Janet looked straight into her mother's eyes. Have you ever asked about Michael beyond his report card? David and Martha looked down shamefully. Amy tried to speak but couldn't find the words. Michael has been obsessed with robots since he was 5, Janet continued. Her voice gradually filled with passion. When his father was alive, they built small robot kits together. After Thomas died, Michael didn't lose that passion. Michael sat quietly, but hearing his mother's words, he straightened his back a little. His eyes were fixed on the photograph. He stays up late every night working on his projects. He might struggle with schoolwork, but he's taught himself programming and engineering principles. Isn't that incredible for a 10-year-old? No one could argue. Brittany approached the photo and looked at Michael with an expression of amazement. Did you really make this? Michael nodded slightly. Yes. How did you make it? Brittany's voice held genuine curiosity. For the first time, a small expression of pride appeared on Michael's face. I collected parts from unused appliances and researched online. Amazing! Brittany exclaimed, seemingly genuinely impressed. Amy asked with a confused expression, but why didn't you tell anyone? About something so wonderful. Janet shrugged. It was always about school grades. You kept saying excellence is expected in this family. But excellence comes in many forms. Michael shines in his own way. During the uncomfortable silence that followed, suddenly a voice was heard from the dining room entrance. I think we should all be honest. Everyone turned to see James, Amy's husband, standing in the doorway. In his hand was Brittany's homework book. James, what are you doing? Amy asked in a confused voice. I found this while organizing Brittany's desk this morning, he said quietly. Brittany, you should tell your mother about using answers from your teacher to do your homework. A silence like a bomb dropping spread through the room. The color drained from Brittany's face, and tears welled in her eyes. Brittany? Is this true? Amy looked at her daughter with disbelief. The girl nodded with trembling lips. I'm sorry. She began to sob. Everyone always says I'm smart, and I felt I had to live up to expectations, so I copied answers from the teacher's desk or borrowed notes from friends. Amy collapsed into a chair. Martha tried to embrace her granddaughter, but Brittany stepped back. I'm not really that smart, she said desperately. But because everyone expected it. I had to lie. The room fell silent. David and Martha were stunned, and Amy covered her face in sadness and confusion. Then something unexpected happened. Michael quietly stood up and went to his cousin's side. He said in a small voice to Brittany. I couldn't make robots well at first either. I failed many times, but I didn't give up and kept going. If you really try hard, you can do well without stealing answers. Surprised by Michael's unexpected kindness, a small light of hope shone on Brittany's tearful face. It was a moment when a true bond formed between the two children for the first time. Janet stroked Michael's head and said quietly, This is my son. His grades might not be the best, but he has a heart that cares for others in trouble. That's what matters most to me. Her words echoed throughout the room, and Amy and their parents were shocked by the error in their judgment. The truth was revealed, and it was time for each of them to face themselves. In the days that followed, a heavy silence enveloped the entire family. Janet drove Michael to and from school and worked as usual, but there were no calls from Amy or contact from her parents. She didn't regret her actions, but in the corner of her mind was anxiety that the family rift had deepened. On Tuesday evening, as Janet was preparing dinner, the doorbell rang. When she opened the door, David and Martha were standing there. Both wore uneasy expressions. "May we come in?" David asked quietly. Janet hesitated for a moment, then widened the door. "Please do." The two entered the living room and sat with stiff expressions. Martha nervously clutched her handbag on her lap. "Where's Michael?" David asked. "In his room. Working on his robot," Janet answered. Martha took a deep breath. "Could we see his work?" Janet was surprised but nodded and went upstairs. Shortly after, she returned with Michael. The boy looked tense seeing his grandparents, but Janet encouragingly pushed his shoulder. "Grandpa, Grandma, do you want to see what I made?" Michael asked in a small voice. David smiled gently. "We'd love to, Michael." Michael guided his grandparents to his room upstairs. When Janet opened the door, a small workbench came into view. On it was a half-assembled robot, surrounded by neatly arranged tools and electronic components. Blueprints and sketches were posted on the walls, and several completed models were displayed on shelves. "This is what I'm working on now." Michael picked up a small prototype. "It's an assistive robot for children with disabilities. I'm designing it so kids with hand disabilities can use it easily, just by pressing a button to help with daily tasks." David listened to his grandson's explanation with eyes wide in surprise and interest. Martha carefully picked up one of the completed models, examining its details. "Amazing, Michael. Did you make all this yourself?" David asked. Michael nodded. "I studied by researching online and borrowing books from the library." "Why didn't you tell us?" Martha asked quietly. "Us." Michael looked at the floor. "I thought no one would be interested if I told them." Tears welled in Martha's eyes. "Grandpa was wrong," David honestly admitted. He placed his hand on Michael's shoulder. "You are the family's pride. And we were far too late to realize it." Returning to dinner, the three adults engaged in serious conversation. David and Martha reflected on their prejudices and old values, and Janet admitted she should have told the truth earlier. Thomas saw Michael's talent. Janet spoke of her husband's memory. "He always said, 'Michael is special. Let's let him shine in his own way.'" A few days later, unexpected visitors came to Janet's house: Amy, James, and Brittany. In a tense atmosphere, they sat in the living room. "First, let me apologize," Amy said frankly. "My attitude was unforgivable. I'm sorry for looking down on Michael." Janet was slightly surprised by her sister's sincere apology. "How's Brittany?" she asked quietly. Amy let out a deep sigh. "She's seeing a counselor. I finally understand how much pressure I was putting on her." Brittany shyly stepped forward. "Michael, I want you to teach me how to make robots. I actually like science, but I've been studying math and language all the time because that's what everyone expected of me." Michael's eyes lit up. "Really? We've cleared all the math trophies and certificates from Brittany's room," James said gently. "We want to give her time to find what she's truly interested in." That afternoon, Michael and Brittany spent time together at Michael's workbench. Michael began teaching his cousin basic programming and how to assemble robots. Seeing the two children cooperating, Janet and Amy also began to gradually repair their sisterly bond. "It reminds me of when we were kids," Amy said quietly. "You always protected me. And now I'm criticizing you," Janet smiled ironically. "But it was necessary," Amy honestly admitted. "I didn't realize what I was doing to Brittany. I was trying so hard to make her perfect that I made her lie." Months later, a science fair was held at school. Michael and Brittany decided to present a joint project. Their exhibit, combining Michael's technical knowledge and Brittany's presentation skills, attracted visitors' attention. "This is an assistive robot for children with disabilities," Brittany explained confidently. "It was Michael's idea and design, and I was in charge of the interface design." Their project won first place and earned a spot in the district competition. Amy hugged her daughter, but instead of praising her grades as before, she celebrated her effort and growth. "What matters isn't the score, but what you learned and how hard you worked." David and Martha also celebrated their grandchildren's success. Martha picked up Michael's trophy and proudly said, "This is the beginning of a new Watson family tradition. Pursuing your passion and enjoying the process." On the day of the district science fair, the whole family gathered to support Michael and Brittany. Their project received high marks from the judges and won a special award. At the awards ceremony, Michael shyly took the microphone. "I want to dedicate this award to my mom who believed in me, and to Brittany who worked hard with me." Brittany also stepped forward and added, "And thanks to our whole family for giving us a second chance." In the audience, Janet and Amy leaned against each other, tears in their eyes along with their parents. A family once divided was now bound by love and mutual understanding. David and Martha had learned to love both grandchildren equally and recognize each of their talents. That night, on the way home, Michael asked his mother, "Mom, am I not the family's embarrassment anymore?" Janet smiled at her son and answered, "Michael, you have always been my pride." 2 years later, a small civic hall in Cedar Rapids was filled with people. The launch event for the Young Inventor Support Program had attracted local politicians, educators, and many children. On stage, Michael and Brittany Watson stood with confident expressions. They were no longer the shy boy and the girl crushed by expectations. "Our robotics education program provides all children with opportunities to express their creativity," Brittany spoke confidently. "Children with learning disabilities, or those who can't find their place in regular classes, can discover their talents here." Michael stepped forward and held up a small robot. This assistive robot is designed to support children with physical disabilities in their daily lives. It's currently being introduced on a trial basis in 3 local elementary schools. Loud applause erupted from the audience. In the front row, Janet and Amy sat proudly, with their parents David and Martha beside them. In these 2 years, they had become a family in the true sense. After the event, the family gathered at Janet's house for what had become a traditional Sunday dinner. The house was still small, but filled with love and laughter. In the kitchen, David helped Janet, while in the living room, Martha listened intently to Michael's latest project. "I can't believe it," Amy said, offering Janet coffee. That day, at Brittany's birthday party, who would have thought it would turn out like this? Janet smiled. "Everything has changed." Amy nodded. "My office now specializes in child advocacy. It's much more fulfilling than chasing numbers." She took a breath. "I learned from Michael that success isn't necessarily just about scores or salary." Outside the window, James was helping Michael and Brittany build a wooden stand. The 2 children, originally a lawyer and an architect, now exchanged robotics terminology that many adults couldn't understand. "Michael's school grades have been improving too," Martha said, watching her grandchildren. "Yes, but we've learned that's not all that matters," Janet answered. "He's growing at his own pace. And most importantly, he's growing into a kind-hearted person." David smiled as he brought a salad bowl from the kitchen. "I've started volunteering at the local school, teaching children the importance of creative thinking. An old teacher's new passion." After dinner, Janet suggested taking a new family photo. Gathered in the backyard, they positioned Michael and Brittany in the center, proudly holding their latest robot project. Smiling adults surrounded them. The camera timer was set, and as everyone said, "Cheese," in unison, Janet remembered that one photograph she had bravely pulled out that day. How that small action had changed the family. Sometimes, it takes courage to show the truth, but it ends up saving the ones you love, she thought quietly. The flash went off, and a new memory was forever captured. The family had now become a family in the true sense, respecting each other's differences, recognizing each other's strengths. Mary Wilson gazed at the morning sunlight streaming through the window as she got up early as usual and began preparing breakfast. Her efficiency was the result of 36 years of practice. There was no wasted motion as she cracked eggs, brewed coffee, and toasted bread. The small town of Oak Hill, Pennsylvania, where the Wilson family lived, was a place where one could clearly feel the changing of seasons. Johnson Accounting, where Mary worked, was a small accounting firm in the center of town. She had worked there for over 10 years and earned her boss's trust through her meticulousness and sense of responsibility. "Mary, is the coffee ready?" Her father Joseph came downstairs with a newspaper in hand. It had been several years since he retired from the local manufacturing company, but his morning routine remained unchanged. The newspaper and coffee marked the beginning of his day. "Yes, it's ready," Mary smiled as she handed him a mug. "I put just a little sugar in it." Joseph took the cup without saying anything and sat down in his usual chair. He took Mary's thoughtfulness for granted and rarely expressed words of gratitude. Eleanor's footsteps could be heard in the kitchen. Mary's mother's interest in fashion never waned. This morning too, she appeared with perfect makeup and in elegant yet casual clothing. "Good morning." "It's French toast this morning," Mary said, to which Eleanor merely nodded briefly before changing the subject. "I heard from Vanessa. She says she'll be late today because she has dinner with Bradley's parents." Mary nodded silently. Her mother's voice always softened when Vanessa became the topic of conversation. Vanessa was a special presence in the family and worked as an assistant manager at a high-end boutique called Elite Style. But her real job seemed to be preparing for marriage to Bradley Carter, who came from one of the wealthiest families in town. "That's lovely," Mary replied while arranging the plates. "Bradley's parents are always so generous to her." "Of course," Eleanor said, taking a sip of hot coffee. "The Wilson family jewel is marrying into the Carter family. You know how much influence their real estate company has in this town." Mary continued cooking in silence. She had a boyfriend, David Morris, but her family rarely talked about him. David was a gentleman who worked at the town library and cherished Mary, but in the Wilson family's eyes, he was considered to lack ambition. With breakfast ready, Mary took her plate and joined the family. The conversation was dominated by Vanessa's wedding preparations and talk about Bradley's family. Mary occasionally nodded while mentally organizing her schedule for the day. After work, she wanted to do some shopping, prepare dinner, do the laundry, and hopefully find a little time to talk with David on the phone. "Mary, what's for dinner tonight?" her father asked abruptly. "Chicken casserole." "I told you yesterday," Mary answered patiently. "Ah, that's right," Joseph returned to his newspaper. "And make sure you take care of the garden soon." Mary nodded quietly. By choosing to continue living at home after college graduation, there was an implicit understanding that she would be responsible for all household chores. What she had initially thought would be temporary had somehow become a permanent role. While clearing up after breakfast, Mary noticed the Morgan couple from next door through the window. They were heading out for their morning walk, and the sight of them holding hands was impressive. Would she and David ever be like that? While imagining this, Mary was pulled back to reality. "Mary, are the preparations for Vanessa's birthday party this weekend all right?" her mother asked. "I'm counting on you for the cake order and decorations." "Don't worry," Mary answered with a smile. "Everything's already arranged." Eleanor nodded with relief. With Mary around, family events always proceeded smoothly. Sometimes it felt like that was her purpose in life, the family's unsung hero, someone everyone took for granted. Mary looked at the clock and hurriedly grabbed her bag. I have to go. I have audit preparations today. Her parents merely waved lightly as Mary left the house. Getting into her car, she exhaled deeply. Her life always seemed to revolve around others. But she told herself that's what family was about. She hoped that someday, her dedication would be recognized. Vanessa's birthday was to be celebrated at Le Chateau, the finest restaurant in Oak Hill. While remembering that her own birthday had been modestly celebrated at a local family restaurant, Mary perfectly prepared everything from the restaurant reservation to gift arrangements for her sister. A toast. To Vanessa's 30th birthday, Joseph raised his champagne glass. A specially ordered flower arrangement was placed on the table, and the soft candlelight gently illuminated their faces. Thank you, Papa, Vanessa responded with a smile, tucking her glossy black hair behind her ear. Her dress appeared to be designer and fit her slim figure perfectly. The diamond on her engagement ring sparkled in the light. Mary smiled quietly and took a sip of champagne. She was wearing a simple beige dress, but her mother had told her, "Why don't you dress up a little more?" "Now, it's time for a gift worthy of this special day," Eleanor said in an excited voice. She took out a large envelope from her handbag and handed it to Vanessa. "What's this?" Vanessa received the envelope with a curious expression. Carefully opening it, she found documents and a small box inside. When she opened the box, a shiny silver key appeared. "This is..." Vanessa's eyes widened. She looked through the documents and took on an expression of disbelief. "A deed to a house." "Yes," Eleanor said in an exalted voice. "It's a house in the new Maple Hills subdivision. A lovely home with 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, and an open kitchen." Joseph proudly puffed out his chest. "Our family jewel deserves the finest jewelry box. We discussed it with Bradley's parents, wanting to give something as a wedding gift. They provided the land, and we provided the building." Vanessa was speechless and rushed to hug her parents. "I can't believe it. Thank you, really, thank you so much. This will make for a happy marriage," her mother said with satisfaction. "The location is perfect too. It's close to Bradley's parents' house, which will be convenient when they help with your children." Mary sat quietly, remembering her own 30th birthday 7 years ago. Nothing special happened, she just bought a cake on her way home from work, and the family ate it together. She tried not to feel disappointed at the time, but now that memory came back vividly. "Mary, don't you have anything to say?" Eleanor prompted. Mary came back to herself and put on her biggest smile. "Congratulations, Vanessa. That's a wonderful gift. It's going to be a beautiful home." Vanessa nodded happily. "I want your advice on the interior. You have such good taste." "Of course," Mary replied. Although complex emotions were swirling inside her, she had no intention of showing them. A week later, Mary's birthday arrived. The Wilson family decided to have dinner at Oak Hill Diner, in the center of town. On a busy Friday evening filled with families, they were led to a small table by the window. "Happy birthday, Mary," David said with a gentle smile. He had been specially invited for this day. "Thank you," Mary replied happily. Placing her hand on David's, she felt a sense of security in his warmth. Joseph and Eleanor were dressed a little more formally than usual, but the place was clearly a different class from last week's restaurant. Nevertheless, Mary was grateful that her family had gathered for her. "Now, Mary," Eleanor said as dinner was drawing to a close, "we've prepared something special for you too." Mary's heart beat a little faster. Her parents handed her a large box. The wrapping paper was simple, but the ribbon was neatly tied. What could it be? Mary opened the box with some expectation. The first things she saw were a rather used duster and sponge. Looking further into the box, she found an old brush, cleaning supplies, and most shockingly, a nameplate with "servant" handwritten on it. A moment of silence fell. Mary's expression froze. "What, not happy?" Joseph suddenly burst into loud laughter. "You're the family servant, aren't you?" Eleanor also laughed, making an excuse-like comment, "It's a joke, just a joke. But since you're so good at housework, we thought this would be most useful." Vanessa laughed uncomfortably, crossing her legs under the table. "Don't mind them. It's just Mom and Dad's joke." Mary heard something breaking deep inside her. It was the sound of hope shattering, hope she had kept deep in her heart for years. The wish to be cherished by her family, to be recognized, to be treated equally, broke into pieces before her eyes. Still, she put on a fake smile. "Yes, very practical. Thank you." An expression of anger appeared on David's face, but when Mary lightly squeezed his arm, he restrained himself. "There's a real present too." Eleanor held out a small box. Inside was a department store gift card. The amount was a fraction of what her sister's birthday gift had cost. "Thank you," Mary said quietly. After returning home, Mary shut herself in her room. Gazing at the moonlight outside her window, for the first time in her life, she seriously questioned herself, how much meaning was there in continuing to live for her family? When morning came, a new determination shone in Mary's eyes. She quietly began packing. She stuffed only the minimum necessary clothes and mementos into a single suitcase. After sending a short message to David, she left a letter on the kitchen table. "I'm going to find my own life. Goodbye." With just that written, Mary left the house. She didn't look back. The apartment Mary arrived at was on the third floor of an old building on the opposite side of town. It was a property managed by David's friend, who kindly accepted her sudden move-in. From the window, she could see a small park in Oak Hill, and the morning sun brightly lit the room. The furniture was minimal, but this was her new place. "Are you sure this is okay?" David asked, not hiding his concern. He placed the heavy suitcase next to the bed. "We could look for a better place." Mary stood by the window and took a deep breath. "This is enough. Just having a place of my own makes me feel free." David placed his hand on her shoulder. "Your family must be worried." "I'm sure they are," Mary turned and smiled. "But now I want to think about myself. For 36 years, I've always lived for someone else." He gently embraced Mary. "I'm by your side. No matter what." That evening, Mary's mobile phone began to ring. It was a call from her mother. She ignored the phone and quietly picked up her teacup. She had decided that the first step in her new life was to stand by her choices. At the Wilson house, Mary's absence immediately began to have an impact. "It's already 8 o'clock. Mary usually has breakfast ready by this time." Eleanor looked around the empty kitchen and complained. When she opened the refrigerator, there were no prepared ingredients, and the coffee maker remained empty. Joseph came downstairs with his newspaper as usual but noticed the absence of the usual morning aroma. "Where's Mary?" Eleanor shrugged. "I went to her room, but she wasn't there. There was just a letter." She pointed to the piece of paper on the kitchen table. Joseph picked it up and read the short text. "What is this? A joke?" His face turned red. "Did she really leave?" "It's probably just a whim," Eleanor said, but her voice trembled slightly. "She'll be back by evening. Come on, I need to make breakfast." But after she burned the bread and broke too many eggs, the couple gave up on breakfast and headed to a nearby cafe. Vanessa stopped by her parents' house that afternoon. Mary isn't answering her phone. "What's going on?" "She left, it seems," Joseph answered grumpily. "Doing whatever she pleases." Vanessa looked at her parents with a surprised expression. Is she angry about the birthday present? I think that was really thoughtless. That was a joke, Eleanor made an excuse. Mary has always understood our jokes. But that wasn't a joke, was it? Vanessa unusually contradicted her parents. You two really have been treating Mary like a servant. Be quiet, Joseph's voice was sharp. Mary will come back soon. She'll remember her responsibilities to the family. But Mary didn't return. She focused on her work at Johnson Accounting and made a new proposal to her boss, Martha Johnson. I believe if we improve this customer management system, efficiency will increase by 20%, Mary explained confidently. Martha nodded with an impressed expression. That's a wonderful idea, Mary. You've become very proactive lately. I'm trying to have a new perspective, Mary smiled gently. In the evening, while having dinner with David at a small restaurant, Mary felt a change in her heart. It's strange. It's only been a week since I left home, but I feel so much lighter. David took her hand. You have the right to live your own life. Aren't you worried about your family? Mary thought for a moment before answering. I am worried. Especially since my father can't cook, and my mother hates cleaning. But she took a breath. This is something I had to do for myself. At the Wilson house, the situation was deteriorating with each passing day. Laundry piled up, and meals relied on delivery or pre-cooked foods. Joseph's irritation grew, and Eleanor was overwhelmed by the complexity of housework. Why is there no toilet paper? Joseph yelled. I wrote it on the shopping list, Eleanor responded in a tired voice. It was your turn to go shopping. Me? I don't remember being told that, Joseph argued. Such small disputes became daily occurrences, and the atmosphere in the house grew heavy. Meanwhile, Vanessa was busy with preparations for her new home and wedding plans, but Mary's absence affected that too. She was supposed to talk with the wedding planner, Vanessa complained to her fiancé Bradley. Mary always makes perfect plans down to the details. Bradley frowned. Why rely on your sister for your own wedding? Vanessa struggled to answer. Because Mary always. She lost her words. Indeed, she had always relied on her sister. From school projects to job interview preparations, and now even her wedding. 2 weeks passed, and Mary was entrusted with important projects at Johnson Accounting. Her proposals were adopted, and the implementation of the new system had begun. Mary, at this rate, a promotion might be in your future, Martha quietly conveyed after a meeting. Mary's eyes sparkled. Thank you. I'll do my best. Her apartment was gradually taking on her personality. David had brought an old bookshelf, and she was slowly gathering plants and small decorative items. On weekends, she sometimes enjoyed short trips to the suburbs with David. One day, a message arrived from Vanessa. Mary, I need to talk to you. Can we meet? After thinking for a long time, Mary replied, I need time right now. I'll keep in touch, so don't worry. She wasn't ready to face her family yet. It would take a little more time to sort out the emotions that had been suppressed for 36 years. Vanessa's wedding was approaching in 2 weeks. The Wilson family was busy with preparations and in the midst of chaos. The invitation responses haven't been organized, Eleanor said in a panic. If Mary were here, this wouldn't. Don't mention Mary's name anymore, Joseph said in a harsh tone. His pride was deeply wounded. She made her choice. However, whether they wanted to admit it or not, Mary's absence left a huge hole. They were now painfully aware of the importance of the countless tasks she had taken for granted. The day before the wedding, Vanessa had just finished her final fitting at the bridal shop. The dress was beautiful, but there was anxiety on her face. What's wrong? Bradley's mother asked. Tomorrow is a special day. You should look happier. Vanessa smiled weakly. My sister isn't coming. I wanted to prepare with her. Your sister is very irresponsible, Bradley's mother sighed. To abandon her family like that. Vanessa wanted to object but couldn't find the words. The answer to who had truly abandoned whom was beginning to become clear in the depths of her heart. On the wedding day, Oak Hill Country Club was elegantly decorated, but behind the scenes was chaos. There were mistakes in the flower arrangements, errors in the seating chart, and small mistakes were accumulating. This wasn't how it was supposed to be, Vanessa said, tearing up. Her makeup was starting to smudge. Although the ceremony somehow began, the imperfections in the details earned stern looks from Bradley's parents. The Wilson family can't pay attention to details, could be heard in whispers. Meanwhile, Mary and David were spending that weekend at a lakeside cottage, enjoying a relaxed time. Today is my sister's wedding, Mary said, gazing at the lake. Do you regret it? David gently asked. Mary shook her head. No. It's a little sad, but this is my choice. There was a new strength in her voice. I have the right to be happy too. One afternoon, a month after the wedding, Mary was compiling quarterly reports at the office. Over the past few weeks, she had begun to emerge as a core member of the company, and clients' trust in her had deepened. While concentrating on her work, her mobile phone began to vibrate. Looking at the screen, she saw an unusual call from her father. Mary hesitated for a moment but eventually took a deep breath and answered the phone. Hello. Mary. Her father's voice was not his usual dignified tone but filled with panic and confusion. Where are you? Come back. What's wrong, Papa? Mary asked calmly. She had never heard her father so distraught. Something terrible has happened. Vanessa and Bradley had a big fight, and it's even involving Mr. and Mrs. Carter. Joseph's voice broke off. Anyway, we need help right now. Mary sat deeply in her chair. What exactly happened? It's about Vanessa's house. She can't do any housework or cooking. When Bradley's mother visited and the house was a mess. Her father's hesitant voice conveyed the seriousness of the situation. They're criticizing Vanessa as a woman who can't even do housework. Though they've been married for less than a month, it's already on the verge of collapse. Mary frowned. And what do you want me to do? I want you to help. Teach Vanessa how to do housework. And Joseph lowered his voice. Actually, we're struggling too. The house isn't functioning well. After a moment of silence, Mary quietly said, I understand. Let's talk. 2 days later, Mary prepared for a reunion with her family at Blue Garden Cafe, in the center of Oak Hill. She had secured a quiet table by the window and arrived a little early. David had offered to accompany her for support, but Mary had told him this was something she needed to face alone. Her parents and Vanessa appeared 10 minutes after the scheduled time. All three looked tired, especially her mother, whose former elegance had receded, and her makeup was slightly disheveled. Mary, Eleanor was the first to speak. I'm glad you came. Mary nodded calmly and urged the three to take their seats. After a waitress brought coffee, silence continued. Well, Mary quietly began. Tell me in detail what happened. Vanessa, with tears in her eyes, began speaking. Bradley's mother suddenly came to visit. The house was messy, and dinner wasn't prepared. She got angry and said, our son shouldn't be living like this. Her voice choked. Bradley started blaming me too, saying, why can't you do anything when you have such a capable sister like Mary? Mary quietly exhaled. Is that why you called me? We should help each other as family, Joseph said in a slightly strong tone. However, it wasn't his previous intimidating attitude but had a somewhat pleading resonance. Family, Mary slowly repeated the word. Since I left, I've been thinking about family. What family is, what it means to me. You're our precious daughter, Eleanor interrupted. Come back home. Mary shook her head. I am not a servant. Her words were quiet but conveyed a strong will. For 36 years, I put my own life on hold for the family. But that's over. If you're talking about that birthday present, that was a joke, Joseph made an excuse. A joke? Mary's voice rose slightly. Do you understand how hurt I was? But that was just the last drop. She took a deep breath and continued. Dad, do you know how many years it's been since I graduated from college? 16 years. During that time, I couldn't rent my own apartment, pursue my career, or seriously consider my relationship with David. Do you know why? Joseph remained silent, averting his gaze. Since I left home, for the first time, I felt the freedom to live my own life. For the first time, I could make my own choices without being bound by someone's expectations or demands. Mary continued, suppressing her emotions. Vanessa, you were always given special treatment. You were loved by our parents, but I wanted to be loved the same way. Tears fell from Vanessa's eyes. I didn't know. I didn't realize, she said in a trembling voice. How much you sacrificed, how much you did for us. I understand now. We were terrible, Eleanor quietly admitted. Regret was visible on her face. We took it for granted, your dedication. A heavy silence fell on the table. Joseph stared at his coffee cup for a long time. And when he finally looked up, there were tears in his eyes. Mary, my daughter, I'm sorry, his voice was hoarse. I was a terrible father. That joke wasn't really a joke. I treated you as a matter of course. My own daughter, almost like a servant, Mary quietly completed the sentence. Joseph nodded painfully. Can you forgive me? Mary took a deep breath. In her heart were years of hurt and anger, but at the same time, a strong desire to move forward. I can forgive, she said slowly. But I won't go back to the old life. I have my own life. And if you want to be a family, I must be a cherished part of that family. Vanessa took her hand. Mary. I'll change too. I want your help, but not help built on your sacrifice. I want us to support each other as sisters. For the first time, Mary felt like she was being seen as a true member of the family. Tears welled up in her eyes too. Let's start a new relationship, Mary said. Equal and respectful of each other. A year of time flowed by, and many things changed. Are you ready? David appeared and placed his hand on Mary's shoulder. A gold ring gleamed on his finger. 3 months ago, he had proposed to Mary, and she had accepted without hesitation. Yes, Mary smiled and returned from the balcony to the room. She now worked as a manager at the accounting firm and had been appointed as the person in charge of a new project. On the small table lay the company's internal newsletter reporting her achievements. What time are your mom and dad coming? David asked, taking wine from the kitchen. 6 o'clock. Vanessa and Bradley are coming a little after that, Mary answered calmly. Family relationships had been gradually repaired since that confrontation day. It was difficult at first, but through time, effort, and most importantly mutual understanding, a new relationship had been built. Joseph and Eleanor had changed significantly. Her father had started attending cooking classes and could now confidently make simple dishes. Her mother had found her own hobby and was active in the local reading club. The two had learned to share household chores and support each other. The doorbell rang, and when Mary opened the door, her parents were standing there. In Joseph's hands was a homemade apple pie. I baked it myself, he said, a little embarrassed. With extra cinnamon, the way you like it. Thank you, Papa, Mary hugged her father. In his eyes was not the former arrogance but gentleness and humility. Eleanor handed Mary a small package. "For your new home," she said. Inside the box was a picture book Mary had loved as a child. "I want you to read it to your children too." After a while, Vanessa and Bradley also arrived. Vanessa had a much more relaxed expression than before and held a salad bowl in her hands. "I made it myself," she said proudly. "The fruits of my cooking class." Mary smiled. Vanessa and Bradley's married life had a tumultuous beginning, but the two had learned to respect each other and now had built a good partnership. Vanessa continued her career at the high-end boutique while also taking on responsibilities at home. Bradley shared in the housework, and their relationship had transformed into an equal one. With the whole family gathered around the table, David raised his glass. "Let's make a toast. To new beginnings." "To new beginnings," everyone said in unison. The dinner conversation was bright and full of laughter. No one was sacrificing themselves anymore, nor was anyone getting special treatment. Each family member cherished their own life while supporting each other. As the night deepened and her parents prepared to leave, Joseph quietly said to Mary, "The day you left was a day of awakening for us." A painful awakening, but a necessary one. Mary nodded. A family built on someone's sacrifice wasn't a real family. "It's different now," Joseph held his daughter's hand. "Now we're a real family." David put his arm around Mary's shoulder, and the two looked up at the night sky visible from the window. A new moon was gently shining. The former family servant was now living her own life and had become a member of a family bound by true bonds.